It's just after 6:30, so we're going to start. My name is Keith Kazmark. I'm the village manager for those of you who I have not met. We are on a little bit of a time frame. Mr. Pittarisi, who is the LSRP from Matrix, is on call for another hearing on or about 8:30. So we are going to try to honor that timeline in order to accommodate our professionals. On the panel tonight is Melissa Fiore. She is the environmental scientist with Matrix New World Engineering. She's also the assigned project manager since the inception of this project from Matrix. Next to her is Chris Pittarisi. He is the LSRP, the licensed site remediation professional assigned to this project. And then next to him is Captain Glenn Ender from the Ridgewood Police Department, who is here tonight to discuss truck routes and other things that will impact the remediation process at the Zabriskie-Schedler property. Just a few ground rules before we start. Tonight's meeting is exclusively about the remediation, okay? Matrix, who is represented here tonight, is not the engineering consulting firm that is assigned to deal with the park development project. I'll also remind folks that we are under active litigation with regard to the park development, so we will not be addressing any issues concerning that tonight. Tonight's meeting is exclusively about the soil testing and the recommended remediation plan that is before the NJDEP. So with that, I would just ask everyone, once we get to the question and answer period, to be respectful of one another, to be respectful of our professional staff that is here with us tonight, so that we can have a good, open, honest dialogue about what this remediation plan looks like and how it will be executed once we receive our bids back. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa to sort of take us through a little bit of the history of this project, where we've been and where we're headed. Melissa?
Cool. You can all hear me? Okay, great. I'm assuming everyone on Zoom can hear, hopefully. Okay, so we were hired to come investigate the imported fill material at the Schedler property. We first came out there last spring to collect soil samples of the berm, the actual physical berm that's on the property. We collected 14 soil samples throughout the berm on the interior at varying depths. And then we came back in June of last year to investigate the balance of the property. What that involved, per the DEP's request, was a grid-like sampling scheme. Each grid had consisted of 10,000 square feet, and one sample was collected from each grid. Each sample was biased towards any fill material that we observed on the property within that grid, and our sampling location was also directed by the DEP that was out there observing this sampling. So we were guided by the DEP, and we were biasing towards any observed fill material. After we did the sampling on the berm and at the grid, we identified a few contaminants of concern. Those were benzoapyrene, benzoanthracene, mercury, and lead. The exceedances that we identified on the grid were then delineated later on in the year. In November, we began, it's called a remedial investigation. We delineated the exceedances. Mostly were benzoapyrene, benzoanthracene, and then a small pocket of mercury. We went out to refine our delineation a bit more in December of last year. And then once we did that, we also ended up finding a pocket of heptachloropoxide, which is a pesticide, a little bit near the house. We delineated that to a very small area of about 14 by 14 feet, to about 2.5 feet below ground surface. So this figure right here.
Dylan, can we put up the tan map, please? No, the other one. There you go. And maybe, can we zoom a little bit?
Yeah, we don't need the,
We-
we don't need the
We
surrounding
don't need the homes
lots.
at the bottom. Big, too small, just right?
I mean, that's fine for my purposes. So through that delineation, we came up with this polygon figure. You'll see the more orange shade that represents where the berm is, and that the berm is coming out in its entirety. We didn't feel it was necessary or purposeful to delineate the berm. We're just going to take it out to remove any of the exceedances that were identified within the berm. The beigeish green area, you'll see there are several, those are soil sample locations. Those are all representative of a clean barrier that we identified via our sampling, our initial sampling, our delineation sampling. So that's how we formed this shape. You'll see that there are some ancillary, smaller shaded areas. Yep, just like that one there, up there. And then there's a couple, one more further this way. Further south. Yep, right there. That's our heptachloroepoxide little area. Those are also small hotspot delineation areas that we identified that we're also going to be removing. So you'll see that there are 2 red sample locations on there. Those sample locations represent a location that we need to go back to and collect another clean sample for during our removal process to further delineate and refine the clean boundary. So once we get out there and we're removing the soil, we'll go and we'll collect a sample from the boundary of that excavation. We'll send it to the lab on a probably expedited turnaround time and then get results, and hopefully that's the end for those 2 locations. This plan is in the DEP's hands right now. They have our full report. Per the DEP's request, we can go to the next figure.
Purple one.
The purple one. The DEP was also out at the site with us on a different day and requested that we delineate, identify visually observed solid waste in addition to the chemically driven solid waste, which is what that other map represents. So the visually observed solid waste consists of things like concrete or brick or asphalt, general solid waste. So these purple areas are representative of where we identified those. And we came up with these figures. We had a survey, one of our survey guys come out and stake out the areas that we kind of identified these locations in. So we have them GPS reference for when we come back. We can go right to these locations and kind of pick up the solid waste and send it to a appropriate recycling facility.
So Melissa, on this map, can you just talk about what examples of visible solid waste might be?
Yeah, so it could be cinder blocks, concrete, wood debris, tire debris, asphalt, things like that, non-soil generated waste.
And some of that maybe have been pre-existing.
Sure. I don't know when it could have been pre-existing. There's no indication, you can't tell.
Dylan, can we go back to the tan map? So Melissa, can you talk about depths and how much, obviously the berm, will
Yeah.
be removed in its entirety?
Yes.
But as far as the depths of what needs to be excavated in these various areas, can you describe that?
Sure. So I'll start with the little ancillary locations. Those are all about 14 by 14 feet in size. They all go down to about 2.5 feet. So we collected a vertical soil sample to identify a clean boundary vertically within the soil profile. So those ones are pretty shallow. The large, we'll call it the large removal area, that varies between 2.5 to about 4 feet, depending upon what our sample results identified and where we are going to also visually observe any solid waste that could be a little bit buried underneath what's on the surface. So our plan is to use the chemically driven samples that we collected to guide us on a depth, as well as remove 6 inches into the native material beyond where the solid waste is identified.
What's the largest depth that you'll have to go beneath the surface to excavate?
Probably 4 feet in a small pocket. Sorry, I don't mean to make you drag this map all around. In a small pocket further north, generally around up there area.
All right. We're going to come back to you to talk about time frame
Sure.
and what the process looks like. But Chris, can you just talk to us a little bit from the LSRP perspective about what the report has found, what's been submitted to DEP, and what any concerns might be?
Sure. So this case is being managed at the DEP under Bureau of Solid Waste Management. Most of the time, these cases would be under site remediation program, but because of how this material arrived at the site, this kind of case, the DEP internally will delegate either the Solid Waste Bureau or site remediation would take the lead. This one we got Solid Waste is taking the lead on this. So what we've been every step of the way, we've been reporting to Tom Farrell, who's the Bureau Chief for Solid Waste.
You can take it out. All right. There you go.
So as we've progressed in our investigation and each step of the way, we've put a plan in front of Tom Farrell, who is the Bureau Chief for Solid Waste, and he's reviewed it and approves what we're doing. At the same time, we do still need to satisfy requirements under the site remediation program. So the report that we put together right now is, it's kind of in a draft form. It's the final report, but Tom is reviewing it for completion. And a lot of times he'll have some feedback. We'll make changes based on what his feedback is in terms of any additional sampling or removal areas that he might find that he wants us to focus on. So that report might still get tweaked, but once that's gone through his review, we're going to finalize it. It's going to get uploaded into the Site Remediation Bureau's portal. And at that point, our plan is in, and we're going to move forward with the removal once, I guess, we get all the necessary approvals in place on the other side of things. As far as feedback we've gotten so far, generally, Tom's been satisfied, I think, with what we've been proposing. The latest report that we gave him is a lot more robust, I think, than anything he's gotten so far. So I think it's going to take a little bit more time for him to review, but we're hoping to get something back from him, hopefully by the end of the month. I know Melissa spoke with him earlier today. I think she spoke with another person in that office earlier this week. So they are taking a look at it. It's just taking them a little longer than usual. So as far as concerns, I don't know that they have any specific concerns right now that they've expressed. They are in the review process, and as soon as we hear back from them, we'll have a better handle on that.
And the one thing I think that should be made clear for the public is during this entire process, Matrix and DEP have been walking together in making sure that the scope of work is reviewed, the delineation results are reviewed. You know, Tom Farrell, who is the head of the Division of Solid Waste or the Bureau of Solid Waste at DEP, has directed their work effort to make sure that all of the areas at the Schedler site have been adequately tested and that these boundaries that Melissa has presented to you tonight encapsulate all of the area of excavation that's going to be needed on the site.
Yeah, and if I could just talk real quick about, this area that we're removing, what that represents, the depth that we're going to is going to be the entirety of the fill material within the boundary of that delineated area. So, we did start out trying to, because not all of the fill is being removed where we had clean samples, stuff is being left in place. And we did initially, we're focused on trying to get some vertical delineation within the fill material to try and limit the amount of material that had to be remediated. But ultimately, as we got closer to to the bottom of that imported material, it became clear that the safest thing to do is just remove everything to depth within that boundary. And then, as Melissa said, we'll do a scrape of another 6 inches of native just to make sure that, add a layer of protection just to make sure that we're leaving nothing behind.
Okay, if we could go back to Melissa. Melissa, could you just walk us through the time frame of where we are now? We're pending DEP, either minor tweaks and then approval. And then from there, what does our time frame look like for the balance of this project?
Yeah, so like we have reiterated, we're waiting on DEP to kind of give us their green light for the plan. We're working on some bid documents right now to hand out to get to in the hands of some remediation contractors to complete this remediation.
And can you just talk about what those contractors, who they would need to be certification wise and all that type of thing?
Yeah, so we will only hire, well, the village will only hire contractors who have worked with contaminated, non-hazardous contaminated soil previously. They're remediation specialists. They all have OSHA 40-hour HAZWOPER training, which means that they are skilled and understand the safety precautions that need to be enacted when dealing with contaminated materials. They know disposal facilities that take, specific kinds of soil. With our characteristics, they'll be well versed in where we can ship this soil safely. And they work with trucking contractors who also do this kind of work.
So you anticipate that we'll be out to bid by the end of the year?
Yeah. And then we'll go through the bid process and then hopefully get shovels in the ground in January. And this whole remediation should take about 6 weeks. So a month and a half.
And our goal is to try to do this during the winter months, obviously, weather allowing, because there's the disturbance in our estimation and in Matrix's estimation will be minimal in the winter time. You have less people out, you have less people walking the neighborhood, biking, all that type of thing. Pedestrian traffic is down. You have the less dust buildup and things of that nature from the construction, from the ongoing construction as it moves forward. So we do feel that trying to get the shovel in the ground in January is the ideal situation to deal with this particular matter.
Mhm.
All right?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share?
I can touch upon the air monitoring we're going to be doing during the remediation. So we will be setting up and monitoring perimeter air monitoring. We'll have a perimeter air monitoring program that will include dust monitors. They look like little stations that we'll set up around the perimeter. They'll have temperature, weather gauges on them. They detect where the wind is going. We are discussing potentially a PID.
Yeah, I mean,
It's mostly the dust that we're concerned with.
it's mostly particulates that they're going to monitor for. In this case, the PID is not looking for the same contaminants that we have at this site. So, but yeah, it'll
Dust is our major concern.
Right.
So to make sure that we are not creating dust that's traveling off site, we will ensure that the remediation contractor has available water suppression materials and tools to continually suppress water each day of the remediation. We'll have action levels as well as visually seeing dust that will guide us towards when we need to enact the dust suppression.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. One thing I will tell you, we invited Captain Ender here tonight to just talk about truck routes. There will be a significant amount of trucks coming in and out of the property. And I've spoken from the onset of knowing that we were going to have to do excavation at the property with Chief Lyons and with Captain Ender about entrance and egress to the property. So Glenn, if you'll just speak to that.
Yeah, so basically the trucks will be entering off of Route 17, Saddle River Road, straight into the property and exiting the same way. So they won't be driving through the neighborhood. They'll just be coming right off the highway and going back on the same route. We'll just keep it very basic.
We're looking for an off-site staging area. So the police department is involved with that endeavor. A lot of that will have to do with the contractor that is awarded the bid for this project. So we'll be talking that through as we get closer to the bid award in a pre-construction meeting to find an adequate staging area for the vehicles that will be needed for the excavation and the soil movement off-site. So that is something that is top of mind as well. Okay. Anything else from you guys? Okay.
No.
The only thing I'd ask you to do, we're going to ask folks to use the microphone so that the folks who are participating via Zoom can hear what's being said in the room.
Okay, so Norca Shell,
Yeah, if you could just say your name too. sir.
yes, Norca Shell, 520. My question is regarding to the noise. Since you're gonna have trucks there, and I'm just right there. So now, it's gonna be very busy, and how noisy that will be?
So I think Melissa's best suited because she's managed projects like this before. So what is the level of noise disturbance that would exist with something like this?
I honestly can't tell you the exact level of decibels that a truck makes while running. It will be continuous trucks coming on and off site. Some of the noises you'll hear will be, you know, revving of the engine, the taking of an excavator bucket and dumping it into the trucks, or just digging with the excavator. As far as decibels go, I'm sorry, I don't know. We can get back to you on what that might be. If that
How
helps.
about duration? How long would that take? Do you have an idea?
It'll probably be about, like I said, 6 weeks.
They're estimating a 6 weeks project. The noise ordinance, correct me if I'm wrong, Captain, is 8 AM on a weekday. We will have further discussion at the manager's discretion. I can extend that time period. So at some point, once we have a contractor and we know what their abilities and capabilities are as far as timeframes go, we will have a greater discussion about whether we widen the timeframe on the weekdays in order to move this project along more quickly. And that is something that we'll talk to the contractor about, and we'll make that decision as we move forward. So.
I have several questions.
Yes, if you could just state your name.
Dr. Salvo Infantino, 6 Betty Court. So have you determined the origin of these chemical contaminations that you have found on the soil? Do you know where they're coming from?
We were not a part of the import of the fill. We simply
No, I'm saying
investigated.
The berm was contaminated. but
Yeah.
You've tested the soil that was originally there.
Correct.
That soil was contaminated, right? Was it originally contaminated there, or was the berm that contaminated it?
So there's two areas. There's imported material that created the berm, and then there's the balance, which is this larger area. There was imported fill brought into that area as well. Our sampling has been within the fill material.
Not in the original soil?
No.
So you don't know, you've never sampled the original soil?
No.
Which could be contaminated because it's right off of a highway where particulates are continually spewing onto that
Right.
land. And the second question is, once you remediate that area, who's to say that that area within 6 months is not contaminated again by the spewing of particulates from the highway? Have you determined this?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, we're going to spend all this money, and within 6 months, this area is going to be contaminated. And the third question, all that white area has not been sampled, correct?
It has been sampled.
The
And-
entire, Mr. Infantino, the entire site has been sampled. And based on the entire site being sampled, this is the area that requires excavation.
So this
And
is
the-
the refined area.
And the other areas are not contaminated?
Correct.
right. So
Those are where the trees are. This area is where the trees are not, correct?
There are trees mostly on where bottlenecks to the east.
But there's less trees because they've been taken down. So it's the area that you've sampled is the area where they've cleared the trees. The area where the trees are has not really been sampled.
No, we sampled where the trees were.
But it's clear of contamination
Correct.
because the trees have protected that area.
Well, whatever, I mean, or maybe the fill didn't extend to that area. So our initial sampling effort in this area was a grid sampling, and it's not depicted on this map because we've gotten to the point now where we've kind of honed in on the area where we need to excavate, and that's what this is remove, and that's what this represents. But our initial sampling, there was a grid, and we collected samples along that grid throughout the entire property, and that's how we identified the areas to focus on for delineation.
But if we determine where the contamination come from, right, we can then understand whether this area is going to be contaminated again. You
Well,
don't know the
so-
origin of the contamination. It's not just the berm. It's the original soil that's contaminated.
So
So-
we haven't sampled we've sampled just the
Right.
fill that was brought in.
Right. So who's to say that once you do your remediation, that the constant spewing of the chemicals from the moving highway nearby, the particulates, is not going to contaminate that area again, and we're going to spend all this money for naught because within 6 months it's going to be, can you say that it's not going to be contaminated from the highway in 6 months after you do your remediation?
No, I can't say that.
Can't say that.
It's, I mean, and that's the case anywhere. It could be, I don't know
Exactly.
any of the houses along the
Exactly.
street, same
Right.
deal.
And
That's what we were brought in to remediate was the imported material that we know is impacted. And so that's kind of where our focus was. But no, yeah, I mean, anywhere along that highway from here to, the
and
end of
the
the
area
day.
that's most at risk is within 100 meters of that highway. The contamination levels fall off as you get further away from the field.
The-
The highest area of contamination
The-
is
the-
within 100 meters of that highway.
The other thing that I will point out in trying to assemble the history of all of this, the lighter area tan is also where the imported soil was stored during the construction of the berm. So there is a school of thought out there, and no one can say this with absolute certainty, but that where the soil was staged in order to build the berm, that's what left this lighter tan area that is in need of excavation.
And the next question is, if you go ahead with this project, who's to say that as you are clearing this area and these particulates are spewed into the air by the moving of the dirt, that the surrounding families that are living there, the houses, are not going to be subjected to those chemicals? How are we going to prevent those chemicals as they're being taken away and agitated into the air, and the wind, if on a windy day, is going to blow it? Those surrounding homes over there, if they breathe in that air, what kind of contamination those people are going to suffer?
Well, that's why the monitors are going to be,
Yes,
Based-
that's why we're going to have an extensive and thorough perimeter air monitoring program, which will encompass several stations that have dust monitoring devices within it that'll be connected to, will be notified. It can be connected to, Keith can be notified when action levels are met. And if and when that happens, we will ensure that there are going to be dust suppression.
But are you going to be measuring also the chemical content of that dust? I mean, the dust is a problem, but the chemicals that are in the soil are going to be agitated and are going to be spewed to the surrounding homes. Are you going to be able to monitor the eventual chemicals that are going to be spewed that we are going to be breathing in?
So it's going to monitor two things. It's going to monitor the particulates, and it's going to monitor the chemical composition as well. But I will say that if we're monitoring the particulates, and if we're preventing that dust from getting anywhere, it's not going to matter what's in it because we're shutting down before it gets off the property. So, but yes, we will be able to monitor what the chemical composition of that dust.
If you think of the dust as a carrier,
I know.
essentially,
Yeah.
yes. So if we're eliminating the dust, then it won't carry to the neighborhood.
Not really true. Not really true.
Sorry?
let's have one person at a time. Are you,
Well,
have more
not really
questions?
true, because the chemicals have different dimensions than the particulates, and they can travel at different lengths, at different speeds. So they're not just carried by the dirt. They travel on their own. The lead, the mercury have their own constitution, their own mass, and they're not carried just by the dirt. They are carried by themselves.
Let me just say
Yeah.
this, though. All the Department of Environmental Protection requirements are all safety factors that need to be put in place for this project. That is under Chris's license to ensure that all of those steps are taking place. In addition to that, as Melissa said earlier, and I think it's worth repeating, the contractor who is awarded this bid is not just your run-of-the-mill construction contractor who does excavation for new building or construction sites. These individuals need to be OSHA certified, and they need to have a background in doing this type of excavation and moving this type of material off-site. So rest assured that all of the DEP, all of the OSHA, and all of the qualifications that we would want the contractor to have, all of those things are going to need to be in place.
But the last thought, and then I'll leave, as you don't know where that chemical contamination came to the soil, so that once you remove it, since you don't know the origin of it, it's going to redeposit there, because that contamination, you should really know where the origin is, because I'm a physician, so the preventative medicine is 100 pounds of cure. So if you take away the symptom, but you don't know where the origin of the symptom is, we're going to have the problem within 6 months to a year.
But let's talk that through, right?
Yeah, let's. do
We
that.
have soil testing results, which many people in this room have seen, that indicated how the soil tested prior to it being brought onto the Schedler property. Not all of the locations where fill was brought from registered or had exceedances. In addition to that, some of the soil testing that was done back then, the metric or the, help me with the word, the standard has changed from the time that the soil was moved to the Schedler property until Matrix was engaged to do the soil testing that's required now. So again, I don't think any of us can speak to how the original soil, pre-berm, pre any disturbance on the Schedler property, how that soil would have tested. Those tests were never taken, but we do have test results that predate the soil being brought to the Schedler site in order to build the berm.
Your conversation is the one when we discovered that smoking caused cancer. So initially, people would smoke and had no idea that it was going to cause cancer. But there was a thought that there was an association.
Mhm.
Then when the metric changed and we were able then to measure the metric, then we said, oh, smoking is the thing that can
Of
kill
course,
you.
yeah.
And here too is the same argument. We're looking at a pollutant that will damage people's lungs. And there's no guarantee here that once what you do, then we're not going to have the problem again. And that pollutant will injure all of us who live in that area.
And I think the main goal to that end is to remediate this property, excavate the soil. Granted, there will be safety precautions that'll be taken during the excavation process, but the goal is to get all of the soil that are within these boundaries off-site and taken to a place that won't allow it to continue to exist on the Schedler
Not to
property.
belabor the point, we need to continue. You don't have the origin. You're not guaranteeing me what the origin is. I know the origin is that highway. And until you tell me it's not the highway, this problem is going to be with us for a long time. And as the metrics get better, we're all going to be sorry for what we are doing. I think this is a very bad project.
Anyway, I have two questions. The first one is, at the end of doing the whole thing, are you going to test again? to
Patty,
make
could you
sure-
just say your name? Just
Patty
so folks know
Infantino.
who's speaking.
6 Betty Court. I just want to make sure that at the end of the project, when everything is all done, you test again to make sure there's nothing there. Is that done?
No, that's the purpose of the testing we're doing up front. It's
You're
identifying,
doing it now, you're taking everything away, and then when you're left, how do you know you've gotten it?
because we're excavating to the limits that were defined by the laboratory data that we have.
Okay, but you don't test it again. Is that what you're saying at the end?
No, so there's two approaches you could take to a project like this. You can dig and sample afterwards, or you can sample ahead of time to define the limits of the removal area and then remove to those limits. The downside of doing it where you dig and you sample is then these are not contaminants that are obvious when you look at the ground, that there's obviously contamination there. So the downside of doing the excavation first and sampling after the fact is you can't tell when you're done. That's why at this project, we sampled ahead of time to identify how far out, delineate the problem first, and then we'll come in and remove to those limits.
I understand what you did. It's a great idea, but in the end, when you take everything away and everything is supposed to be hunky-dory, how do you know without testing that it is?
Because we did the testing already. That's what this testing
Okay,
is.
okay, you're saying that after you've taken it away, everything is going to be fine. How do you,
But
Okay.
keep in mind, Patty, the village nor matrix decide that process. That is a process that is outlined and guided by the DEP. So the DEP does not require, when you do an excavation project like this, they don't require testing post excavation because the boundaries have already been identified as to where the excavation boundaries extend to.
well, I think they should. And the second thing is very easy. There are kids waiting on the corner here at Kingsbridge Lane. They cannot be waiting. You have to really connect the trucks with the time the kids are going to school and school buses. They can't have all these trucks coming in when these kids are waiting for the bus.
So
I
we
mean,
are very sensitive to that. As I mentioned, Captain Ender and Chief Lyons are aware of this. And one of the concerns that I have is the school drop-off and dismissal times. We may very well have to have a conversation with Dr. Schwartz at the Board of Education. I have not mentioned this to the doc yet, so this is new information. But we may have to talk to him about altering where the children are picked up to keep them off West Saddle River Road during the 6 weeks of this project. But that is a conversation that we will have to ensure the safety of the neighborhood and most importantly, the safety of the children.
if the bridge is fixed, then you'll have an.
The bridge will be open by Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I was surprised. I was surprised how long it
We're gonna
took.
pass the microphone. This gentleman's next here.
Hello, my name is John Soriano. I live on Kenwood. My question is more for the captain to, if you maybe, sir, if you could zoom out on the map and could you just highlight where the trucks will be getting on and off from the highway, just so I can see it.
Yeah, Dylan, if you could zoom out.
Zoom out, please.
So they'll be coming off Route 17 and going to the second driveway right here around the house, straight in, straight back out.
By Tribune and,
The side. Because it'll be limited just then.
Yeah,
Okay.
The truck traffic will be limited here to approximately here where the driveway apron is.
okay,
And then when they leave, they'll go back out and on both entrance and exit, they'll be on Route 17.
okay, because I live on Kenwood. My daughter, she's in 5th grade, goes to Hawes, takes the bus. Now, the bus picks her up right in front of our house on Kenwood, which is very convenient and great, but for the other students, that's still a factor. What would happen just by chance, somebody turns left and goes down West Saddle River Road? I mean, if they start doing that.
Well, I mean, listen, it's our job in working with the police department and the contractor, who's unknown at this point, to make sure all of those safety precautions are in place. To be honest with you, I would almost suggest some sort of signage that our signal division can put together so that if we do have an unfamiliar driver of one of these trucks,
Okay.
that he or she can be alerted that there should be no truck traffic beyond that point.
Okay, that's an easy fix. What about parking? Anybody else coming in doing work, parking on West Saddle River Road? That is a narrow street. And, even when the bus comes along for pickup for the middle school, high school, or for the elementary, that takes up space. So will people be parking on West Saddle River or on Kingsbridge or Terhune or on my street, Kenwood?
So Melissa, how many passenger vehicles do you think would be here beyond the trucks?
Give
on
me a
a
minute
project like this?
to think of all those involved. One of our vehicles, a few laborers, the operator.
Less than a half a dozen?
Yeah, I'd say maybe about 6.
So I think we would do our best to try to direct those folks, obviously outside of the pathway of the vehicles, entering and exiting the property, but have them park in a designated area on the Schedler site. That's not to say, I mean, listen, if someone wants to come and park on your street, it's public road.
No, that I
We don't have
understand.
enforcement, but
yeah.
we can request and semi-direct our contractor and our consulting engineers to park on site.
Thank you.
Also post no parking on the truck route.
You want to just say that?
Yeah, we can also post no parking on the truck route. So there'll be no car, so they'll have a free lane and they won't be able to. Yes. So
Yeah,
where they're
so-
gonna go, we'll put out temporary no parking signs.
So there'd be no parking on either side of the road, from the highway to the driveway apron of the Schedler.
But not further down.
Right. Just the truck route.
Just the truck.
Yep.
Mr. No?
Hello, Michael. No, how are you? I had a couple of questions. The first one was, you mentioned 5 chemicals, pesticides, mercury, lead, but what were the first 2? Is there some common
They,
gasoline or something like?
no,
that,
it's
or-
not gasoline. They're benzoate-pyrene and benzoate-anthracene. They're part of the polyaromatic hydrocarbon family. They're typically found in fill materials.
Okay. The other question I had is, was any testing done of the water?
We did not test the water as we never found water. We advanced soil borings down to 10 feet, a lot of them down to 5 feet. Groundwater was never encountered.
Okay. I had one other question, but now I don't remember what it is. So, all right, I'll pass
We
it
can come
along.
back to you. Dylan, if you grab the mic. If you, sir, I think she had her hand up, and we're gonna get to everybody's questions. We just asked that you raise your hand.
No? Okay. I'm Andrea Mishler, 5 Betty Court. I just wanted to know, the trucks that are going to be taking this fill out, like, what are they like? Do they have covers over them? They
Yes,
do?
they're typical triaxle dump trucks, and they have a rolling kind of cover, so it rolls out when they get filled and are transporting the material, and it rolls back in when they're getting filled.
It's a mesh tarp-like cover that
Yeah.
would go over.
Yeah. You've seen them on the highway, probably.
Yeah, but I've been on the highway where things have been flying right and left, even with those tarp things. And I'm concerned that they will not be within your border of testing the air as these, but still in the neighborhood and around us. So I was just curious how you deal with that.
So they'll have them covered. I mean, they're licensed drivers. The transporters have licenses that they need to protect. If they get caught with stuff flying off the truck, like you described, that they get fines, they could lose their license. So that's why we use licensed transporters.
But no particulates could get loose from there?
No, I mean, they have weight limits on the trucks, so you shouldn't see mounding over the top of the truck. They'll have it covered. Every precaution, every reasonable precaution they can take to prevent that from happening, they will.
And we will have monitors from Matrix on site.
Oh, we'll
and-
be there the whole time.
And at times from DEP as well.
I'm sure DEP will want
to make
to come
sure
out.
to
Yeah.
Make sure
But-
that all the excavation process is being done safely and properly.
But what about on West Saddle River Road as the trucks are leaving? That's what I mean, I know you're going to be doing what you're going to be doing and you'll have those monitors, but you're not really talking about any debris or anything that could come off
So
of those
what
trucks
we
on
would,
West
what we,
Saddle River.
what we would do, Andrea, is we would ask Matrix to have their inspection team monitoring the entire route from the time they get off of Route 7. Well, really, we're more concerned about when they're getting back on Route 17, but while they're filling up the truck, while they're leaving the site, and while they're gaining access to Route 17 North, that's really the boundaries of what we can control or what we can monitor. Once those trucks are on Route 17, that's up to
Right,
the
but I'm just concerned about
police department.
Yeah.
that little
that little
part of the
strip.
street that they'd be on and those houses that are around it and the kids who might be.
We can certainly during the pre-construction meeting and during the course of the project, keep an eye on the contractor to make sure that those safety precautions are being taken until they're on Route 17 North with a
Right.
with a clear run.
We,
Okay.
we will also, The contractor will also have a soil erosion sediment control plan, an SESC plan that is required to have. And typically with that, there's silt fencing that is installed along the boundary of the property to prevent any runoff from coming off the site, as well as typically there is like a track pad made of stone that trucks have to drive over coming in and coming out to remove any debris coming off of the tires themselves. We can also do a tire wash. It's like a tire wash station essentially, to ensure that no mud or silts or soils are also getting tracked off site and onto the roads.
Thank you.
I'm Nancy Friedman, 526 West Saddle River Road. I'm just going to stand up so I can see you. I think part of the problem is like you said, we need to trust that you'll take every reasonable measure. And as a resident, I feel like every reasonable measure would have been not dumping the soil that you knew was contaminated in the first place. So there's a basic trust boundary that I'm having trouble with. And to do it in January, you say there'll be less dust buildup then. And you mentioned that there were noise hours, that it had to be done between 8 and 6, but then you said maybe they could extend them to get it done faster. And I can tell you, as someone who walks a dog in the morning and sees all the kids waiting at the bus stop and all the other people walking their dogs, earlier than 8's not a good idea. And if you extend it later than that, now people are coming home from work, they're trying to have dinner, and frankly, it's dark in January. So I'm not sure
We
how.
wouldn't be
easy
going
that
later. We wouldn't be going later into the.
I hope it
evening
wouldn't be
hours.
going earlier.
Well, that's a discussion we'll have with the contractor, but listen, I'm here to listen to you tonight. And if collectively you think starting at 8, but having the project extend longer in weeks is the way to go, we can certainly have that discussion.
And the other thing you said, that there was no groundwater anywhere that was ever encountered, but in the DEP report, they said that there were wetlands there. So did you not go near those areas? Was it not tested in its entirety, or how did we miss that?
No, what the DEP has identified as a wetlands is not connected to the water table in any way. It looks like it's, the main driver for, I think, the identification was the vegetation that's there, which is typical of wetlands. But those plants can grow in just surface areas where water collects as well. That's what looked like happened here. We did, as Melissa said, we drove a boring down to 10 feet and we had dry soil. So it's not that the area was avoided, it's that it's just not in contact with the water table.
That area seems to have been created by a depression that we believe was created during the construction project of developing the berm, and a subsequent water main break on the project.
Maybe. And then my last point was, you mentioned.
With all due respect, though, they did borings down to 5 or 10 feet,
We did
Which
many
indi-
down to
which-
5 feet.
which in that area indicated no groundwater below the surface, correct?
Correct.
That's
Okay,
correct.
I
And
just
we also,
want to confirm that.
without getting into too technical of a discussion about it, another aspect of wetlands would be the soil type, if you have a hydric soil type. And there was a thin layer of hydric soil type that was identified maybe about 6 inches down. It was only about a 5 or 6 inch layer. And after that, we were back into standard brown, regular, non-hydric soil. So, typically with a wetlands, you would see hydric soil that extends a much deeper column of soil that's connected to the water table. So that's why I understand the DEP has classified that as a wetlands. But I know Suburban had their own experts looked at it. We had our experts look at it. In our opinion, it's not what you would consider a natural wetland. So, and I only say that not to,
Experts.
I'm sorry.
It's a disagreement among experts then.
Yeah, and I'm not, the only reason I say that is because your question was about about groundwater. And I want to just make it clear, we did not come in contact with water down to 10 feet. And I know that you hear wetlands and you think, well, there's got to be water there because there's wetlands there. But this is not that kind of wetlands as far as we could tell, as far as the experts that we had look at it.
Okay. And then the last thing I have is, you mentioned that there was a 40-hour training required to be OSHA certified, which seems like incredibly little. Like, you need 200 hours to teach yoga. 40 hours for this kind of removal seems like a terrible idea.
It's an OSHA standard, which is a federal program. And it's something like I'm trained in it, Chris is trained in it. You get a refresher course every single year that you have to take to make sure you're up to speed on the protocols that need to be taken. The 40-hour is the barrier to entry essentially. And then, you're taking a refresher every year.
It's a federal requirement. It's not something that's covered even at the state level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when you were saying the DEP requires you to test beforehand, but you're not required to test after. And I feel like that's a small measure to take for the community to test after. You could go the extra step.
The
It
one
would
thing I will
give
say,
peace of mind maybe to
the-
people who live there.
the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and their standards, especially their most recent standards, are unquestionably some of the most stringent, if not the most stringent in the country. So
Good.
I agree. And that is what we're following. I think, if we lived other places, which we don't, the standards would be different. But I think based on the fact that the DEP here in New Jersey has such strict standards, there's a level of comfort with what the DEP is going to require us to do at this site.
See.
Hi, Eric Felt. I had two questions regarding, I guess, the mechanism for process. It's a little premature until you have the contractors in place, obviously, but you could probably explain what you were going to require of them. The first part has to deal with the particulate suppression. When you're going to be digging the fill material out and loading into the trucks, obviously you have the air monitoring, which you'll just determine where you're going to be placing them. You talked about water suppression. What will be the standard when temperatures go down around freezing in January? Will there be a halt in progress? What is typically done in order, your aerosol, I guess, doing a fine mist, I guess, for spraying. The efficacy drops obviously with temperatures as they drop below towards the freezing point.
Freezing. Yeah.
So at what point efficacy do you determine temperatures with work stoppage?
So there are other mechanisms we can use, such as foam, to suppress, to do dust suppression. There's foam out, the foam agent. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head right now. That we can also use if temperatures get below freezing and we find that the water is quite literally freezing. I don't know how we're going to store the water on site, whether it's going to be in several totes or if we're going to just bring a water truck on site and maintain it there the entire time. That's kind of going to be up to the contractor on what they want to do with that. And I'm not sure if trucks have like a heating mechanism in them for water specifically. Yeah. To keep the water at a temperature keeps it liquid.
So you would opt to have the foam backup,
We could have the phone backup. Yeah, that's a conversation.
prevent the stoppage, and obviously you want to get it done as quickly as possible. And
Right. We don't want to hold it up if we don't have to because of dust.
and limit the spread, obviously. to
Correct.
Joining properties.
Correct.
The other thing that you mentioned also was the action levels for the air monitoring.
Mhm.
A system in place that would go possibly to Keith, for instance. What would be the response time going to Keith then and then to the contractor?
Well, we will have we will know if alerts are sounded. We're going to have somebody on site the whole entire time that will immediately tell the contractor, halt what you're doing. We need to address the action levels that we just hit.
Melissa, do you see it in any scenario, let's say worst case scenario, right? I don't anticipate that this will happen, but if we did need to inform the community, is there something that would trigger that?
What do you,
If these testing posts tested positive
okay.
and, you alerted the contractor, you alerted my office, would there ever be a point where you think we would need to alert the surrounding neighbors?
Yeah, sure. If it got high and we did not address it as soon as possible, yeah, absolutely, we would tell.
For instance, if the winds were to get too strong and the suppression was not sufficient at that point, action levels would reach a certain level. You would have something in place to notify the community for the surrounding area.
Yeah, however you would want to.
And that's
address that
something,
for
and that's
them.
something that we can certainly put together. This
Whether it's a text
this
chain or
neighborhood has a
something.
very robust communication system,
Mhm.
as I understand it. So, between the collection of cell phone numbers from tonight, working with the Schedler Friends email group and that type of thing, can I guarantee that there would be immediate communication to everyone, 100%? that never happens in municipal communication, but we can certainly let mass amounts of people in that neighborhood know because we have a lot of information stored for those
Well,
folks.
it would go quite a distance in reassuring the community.
Sure.
To have something in place prior to starting shovels on the ground and telling them what the response time would be. So-
Keep in mind, Mr. Felt, our OEM coordinator, Jeremy Kleiman, he can now, with our reverse 911 system, which is not just a phone call, but it's also a text and an email. He can actually go in and geomap different neighborhoods and send those messages just to those specific neighborhoods. So that's probably something that we would take advantage of if, God forbid, we needed to alert the neighbors.
Again, that's insurance. You hope to never use it, but you want to
Right.
make sure you have something in place.
But we have it in place. We have that in place.
Well, that's good. Then that's wonderful if you have that.
Right. And what we can also do is we could do and we've done this before, but we could do another mailing before the project starts that would allow people to scan a QR code and go in and sign up for those emergency notifications. So that might be something just to reassure that we have as many people in that neighborhood in our communication system. We can make that effort as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Neha Murat. I have several questions here. So I see those little isolated areas, those are very close to homes. And you mentioned those are like 14 by 14 feet. And so my question is, your suppression system, is that going to limit and is that going to contain anything within that area? Because it's extremely close to homes here and it's really my concern there. And can you actually install any physical barrier there to make sure there's extra protection? It doesn't go, it doesn't cause the bad. Yes,
So it's
that one and that one
Yeah.
up there, yes.
So the water dust suppression is gonna be a hose so the hose we can connect as many hoses as we need to get to the locations that we will be removing soil in. As far as installing a barrier to some degree, we can talk with our contractor if that appears to be necessary, to maybe it looks like a sheet pile wall or something like that.
Okay,
For those of you who came in late, if you could just make sure that you sign the sign-in sheet in the back, we are going to submit that to the Public Outreach Office at DEP. So capturing everyone who is here would be very helpful.
my other question is, what is going to happen to all those trees in that greenish area?
So to complete our remediation, the trees do have to be removed. We can't viably keep a tree alive when you're, removing more than 6 inches of soil around it. So they will be coming down as part of the remediation and being disposed of.
Do you have those counts with you?
So we had someone go out there with the Villages Parks Department to identify how many trees will be coming down. I believe they use a diameter breast height measurement of 8 inches to qualify a tree. And we counted 35 trees in the remediation area.
In that greenish area,
Yes, the greenish beige area.
Within the excavation.
and what's going to happen to the trees on the berm, or those are also going to be removed?
We adopted a resolution last night. Well, the village council adopted a resolution last night that is going to cause those trees to be replanted along the northern end of the property. So we have a Downs Tree Service who does a lot of work for the village. They walk the property. There's, I want to say about 80 trees. Don't quote me on that number, but that just a quick count is what brought us to that number. And those trees are going to be repopulated along this area.
So those trees are currently in contaminated soil.
Yes, there's a
Okay.
specific process to cleaning the bulb that will free that of any contaminated soil as part of the replanting process.
But how can you guarantee that that's not going to further cause contamination right along the border, right there?
Chris, can you talk about what that project, process looks like in order to replant those trees?
So the contamination that we're talking about is in the soil, it's in the fill material, and any trees that are moved, we're requiring all of the soil has to be removed from the bulb before it's transported. So anything that's getting replanted will not have soil on the root bulb when it gets moved.
I mean, I'm not a tree expert, but I'm thinking like it's like a disease that the trees would also get because of the contamination.
The science wouldn't support that.
No, I mean, if, I didn't understand what you were, what, could you say that again?
It's like a disease that the tree would get from the contamination. The trees are not growing in good soil. And as far as I know, they have not been taken care of at all. They've just been left to grow there on their own.
So any of the trees, if there was an impact from the contamination that they're in, what's going to happen is the tree's going to die. That's not going to result in a contamination spread to you in residents that live adjacent to the property.
Yeah. But those trees are also not thriving right now because again, they have not been taken care of for a very long time. They've not been thriving. I mean, what's the guarantee that they will grow effectively when you replant them?
Well, the choice that the village had was to discard all of those trees, or try to save them and replant them with the assurances that they can be safely replanted without any contaminated soil affixed to the bottom of them. I think if any of those trees were going to die based on the maintenance plan, many of them have already, but the healthy trees, we want to do everything we can to save and replant on the property.
So have you counted how many are healthy and how many are have died or on the verge of
I want
dying?
to say that there's about 80 healthy trees that are able to be. Can we just have the microphone so that the folks at home can hear?
Okay, I have one more question. So in, I think, July this year, the Department of Health came up with a report and they recommended specifically sampling the neighboring properties. Why was that not done?
I don't remember that aspect of the report.
So what Matrix is doing, we came in to remediate the impacted fill, and we've reached kind of the boundary of where we see that impact. If we had impact that extended off of the property or that we thought was extending off the property, that at that point we would have sampled neighboring residences to see if there was any contamination present on those properties. But because we reached the end of it, the lateral extent through our sampling, there was really no reason to sample nearby properties.
But you could have just extended the grid to include the neighboring properties, right? I mean, yeah, you delineated this, but what if something was just blown away by wind and landed on the neighboring properties?
I mean, so the way that the investigations typically go is we follow the data. And I think that we could sample all of the residents and potentially there's something there and potentially there isn't something there, but there's no nexus from the contamination that we have at the site to those properties if we were to find something. So from a remediation standpoint, we're focused on where the data says the contamination extends to. I understand I understand what you're asking and I understand the concern,
Yeah,
but I think that,
at least to rule out that there's nothing there.
I guess
That would just provide more certainty and rule out any concerns.
right. And I think, we had the conversation before that these contaminants in particular, a lot of times could be deposited on properties that are adjacent to roadways. That's across the state. It's not specific to this site. So there could be properties in the area that do have these contaminants in the soil, completely unrelated to the fill material that's there. And so that's why when we do these.
So if the characteristics of that fill material, if they match if something you find on the other properties, if it matches that, then you could say, okay, it is from that source.
Well, I mean, are you seeing that? We have not seen any.
Seeing it visually, no.
Okay.
But again, the Department of Health specifically recommended this. That's why I'm bringing this up.
Yeah. So for the remediation effort, that this is, we follow the data that we have. If, the Department of Health recommended sampling, I don't know who was that recommendation directed at.
Oh, that was specifically, and I mean, I have the report again. That was specifically to the LSRP.
Yeah, so I know there was some conversations that I had with the DOH where they had requested some on-site sampling on the property at certain depths. And we indicated that we'd be willing to collect those samples for them if they wanted to fund that. And they chose not to do that. But I don't remember having any conversations with her about sample. And I'm sorry, I forget the woman, do you remember the woman's name?
I don't remember the woman's.
With the DOH about sampling offsite properties. That wasn't something when I spoke to her. that she-
I want to stress that this entire process is governed by the Department of Environmental Protection. And Chris and Melissa have gone to every length to ensure that what Tom Farrell and his bureau down at DEP have required, that we have gone to that length to ensure that the public safety and that the condition of this property is upheld. So again, with respect, and I know how the Department of Health got involved and all that type of thing, but at the end of the day, it's the DEP that guides the direction of what a firm like Matrix does on that property.
Yeah, I just don't have the closure on that, like how this whole thing happened and this just got neglected. All right,
Anyone else?
Good evening, Ann Loving, Ridgewood resident. I have two questions. If you have to use foam because the temperature has dropped below the freezing point, what is the chemical composition of the foam?
I don't know the chemical composition of the foam off the top of my head right now. I can tell you it's not PFAS containing foam, as that's kind of associated with
But if,
firefighting foam. That's not the foam I'm talking about.
but if it's anything other than dihydrogen monoxide, it's a chemical that we don't really want. I don't understand using the foam. That makes no sense to me.
We don't have to use the foam either. I mean, we can either use water or no foam, and just, during days when it's freezing.
Melissa, is it standard practice in the industry?
Yes, we've used foam several times.
I think that probably people would want to know what the chemical composition.
We
of
can
the
pass
foam-
that along.
Yeah.
So, what we'll have to do is put together a perimeter air monitoring plan. And that's for the on-site personnel to follow when we do the work. And so that information will be included in there. And we can provide that to the village to disseminate. I guess all of the reports have been posted on the website, I believe. We can provide that ahead of time so you can take a look at it and review.
Thank you. My other question is for Mr. Kasmark. When you keep saying that we will be monitoring, who is the collective we? So people from the town, you, Mr. Rudishauser?
Consulting engineer.
So not we, the village employees. There will.
There are consulting engineers, so I consider them part of the we.
Okay, so that's who will be monitoring.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cynthia O'Keefe. Will there be any audible alarms set up on the property, in case of, just like stop work?
You're referencing the stations that I was talking about before. Typically, they don't have audible alarms on them or flashing alarms. With technology, we've graduated to alarms on the cell phones. There's apps that those stations communicate to the people who they need to be communicated to. So we haven't used alarms or lights or anything like that recently.
And my other question is, you mentioned about the groundwater, that you didn't identify groundwater in your discovery. So the properties that are to the right of the Schedler property, the people who live on that border are all on, most of them are on private wells. So how do those residents, is there any testing that we can do of the groundwater table to see where it's flowing from, to our properties? So that we have peace of mind and can sleep at night and know that, if you're not going to at least test the soil, I think we should have some kind of assurance that where the groundwater is, located and where it's flowing, if it's flowing over into the direction of those properties, I think it's a serious concern because they're not on municipal water. So those are my questions.
In any of those 10-foot borings, there was no groundwater detected?
Correct. We have not identified groundwater on the site.
Okay. And do you want to, I know we've been asked this question in the past, especially in the series of questions that we've posted online that Chris and Melissa have put together. Do you want to just touch upon the groundwater testing issue that was brought up during the Q&A that was online? We didn't test for groundwater.
Oh, right. So, I don't know that this is going to answer your question, but when we investigate a site like this, we would collect groundwater samples or put in wells to collect groundwater samples if there was a high likelihood that contamination came in contact with groundwater. Based on the chemicals that we have here, the depth that we have visually confirmed and chemically confirmed where we have contamination, and the depth that we bored to without encountering any kind of wet soil or groundwater, the likelihood that there's been groundwater impact is very low. With regard to your question, is there testing that can be done? You know, in order to identify the flow direction of groundwater, we would need to put in a number of points to calculate that. It's not an easy thing to do. We'd have to put in at least 3, but you know, to get a really good picture, probably somewhere between 5 and 6 points to give us that data. I think that if you are concerned, there's testing you can do on the wells. I don't know if you're talking about your house in particular or just in the general sense, but there is.
Neighborhood, yeah.
I'm sorry?
The neighbors that are
Yeah.
on private wells.
So, you know, there are firms that can do well testing. And I think that if there's a concern, that's probably the better route, because you know, even if we identify the flow direction and it doesn't show that groundwater is flowing in a particular way, I don't know that that's going to satisfy your concern. I think really what you're concerned about is, do you have any impact in your well?
Well, I think it dovetails into the stormwater management plan that I guess Suburban or whoever else is doing it, which has nothing to do with tonight's meeting. But yeah, that would, I guess, be a future concern and hopefully a discussion, Keith.
And I just want to reiterate, and I know we've met with Rich Calby and Cynthia and some other residents about the well issue. Certainly, if you are one of those residents who has a well and you would like the test results to be analyzed by Ridgewood Water, that is a standing invitation. If you'd like to submit them to myself, or you'd rather submit them to Rich Calby directly, our team at Ridgewood Water can certainly help you look those over and analyze those moving forward.
Hi, good evening, Leo Ruan, Kingsbridge Lane. I got a question. Earlier on, you said that you broke it up into 10,000 square feet grids. So it's about a 7-acre site. So that was did you only do about 30 tests?
We initially did 28. We called them grid samples.
Okay, and is that 28? So that's like about 4 per acre. Is that enough for?
That is what the DEP requested that we do. So in that grid, that rectangle that was created, the DEP guided us and told us we needed to collect our samples within the actual fill material. So it was biased towards the potentially most contaminated material.
So yeah, yeah, it's the actual distribution of the testing. It was more towards the filled areas up the top, but what about other areas of property? So would that be like more like 1 acre with only 1 sample taken?
It wasn't based per acre. It was in an attempt to cover the whole entire site with a reasonable amount of samples to be taken to be representative of the site. A question for Tom Farrell is, why did he pick 10,000 square feet? I can certainly ask him that.
Yeah,
if you want me to.
Yeah, but it's also it's the distribution. Was the distribution just more towards the very top where the beige and the green
yeah.
is, as opposed to other parts of the site?
The grid took up the entire site.
Yeah,
from
I guess
the corner.
maybe what's not clear.
Correct. Oh, yeah,
Right.
correct.
What's probably not clear from, and maybe it's on us, we should have brought that map as well, but the initial grid sampling was uniformly distributed across the entire site. As we collect, whenever we had a hit above a standard, there were step outs at each of those individual grid locations. So yeah, the initial number was what,
28.
28, but as we got data in, there was more. We didn't go from that to this. There was intermediate steps where we were stepping out and collecting more samples whenever we had a hit. This represents kind of the final, like where we identified the lateral extent of the contamination would be, but it's not representative of where we have all samples collected. I think that's probably in the reports.
It's in several of the reports, the actual grid.
And I just
Look,
want to
grid
stress,
sampling.
everything they just explained earlier in the meeting about the grid sampling was dictated by the DEP to Matrix as to the scope of work.
And the report that Tom Farrell is currently reviewing, that once we get through that process with him, we're going to upload onto the portal at the DEP, that in accordance with the public outreach plan that we put together, that will then be posted for the community to review as well. And that will have maps that depict all of the samples that we took through the life of the
I
project.
believe it has like 20 something maps on it.
Thank you.
Christina Million, Ridgewood resident. The plan has not been approved yet by DEP. So when it is approved, if there's edits to everything you just went over, how is the public going to be updated on that?
What we'll do is I'll ask Matrix if there are any changes to the plan that was initially submitted. One, to make an update to the plan, which will be posted on the village website. And Melissa, if we could actually bullet point any of the changes that Mr. Farrell recommends, we will also post that to the village website and we'll make you aware of it.
Yeah, he typically communicates with us via, official correspondence and outlines what he would like to see.
So, but the report that ultimately gets posted to the village website is going to be the report that has been finalized and has already gone through that level of review. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding, you're asking changes that are made through as part of the process going through with Tom? So the report that gets disseminated will have already gone through that process. There won't be any changes. The report that's posted is going to be the final plan. So are you asking, you want to see like how the difference from the report that was provided to Tom and what the final report is? Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Understood.
We'll capture those in a bullet list. I'd ask Matrix to do that for us.
Yeah, we can do that.
Any significant changes? I mean, if he's changing commas, I don't want to know, but if he's changing, specific acts that you need to take
Yeah.
between what you initially submitted, I have no problem with disclosing that to the public and letting you see.
Hi, I'm Russell from 626 Kingsbridge Lane, which is the first house as soon as you pull in from the highway. So those trucks, that's one of my biggest concerns because my dad, he works night shift, right? So how are you going to guarantee that his sleep won't be disturbed during the day? Like, is there a way that you can kind of mitigate the sound of the trucks?
I don't know of any ways to mitigate the truck noises other than getting all electric trucks.
Yeah,
I don't know if they exist.
To happen. Yeah, I mean, listen, we're going to do everything when we meet with the contractor once the bid is awarded to try to mitigate as many disturbances as we can. But I also want to set honest expectations here. There are going to be a lot of trucks that come onto this site to excavate this material. I am inclined, and by all means, folks, as you speak tonight, if you think differently, I would like to hear that because this affects your quality of life for the duration of this project. But if we want to, have the window from 8 to 6 rather than trying to start earlier in order to expedite the entirety of the project, we can have that discussion. My opinion coming into this is the quicker we can get in and out of this site and do the excavation, the remediation, the less disturbance it's going to have for folks like your father. But if we want to shorten the time periods and extend the weeks, that's a discussion that we can have together.
I'm also curious, how high do the monitors monitor the air up to?
Like usually about 5 feet.
So is there a possibility that all of those, there's some dust that goes above 5 feet, and then since it's winter, it's going to be windier. Is there a way that you can blow, like there's certain dust that blows over that you don't kind of monitor and it comes down outside of your perimeter?
Yes. The short answer to your question is yes. We would hope to, if there's enough dust that's being generated that's enacting the action levels, and we're alerted to that, we will suppress the dust as much as you possibly can so it doesn't go up.
And so with the monitors, once you hit that level, it's already breached. So what actions would you take to remediate
We,
the dust that kind of passed those levels?
we would initiate a stop work immediately. So no more dust would be being generated and enact like things like the water suppression.
But how about the dust that already has passed through the monitor?
That we can't like necessarily chase the dust. Or
But can I ask a question that I did not ask yet, and it came to me during the course of this discussion? If we have an excessively windy day
Mhm.
during the course of this project, would you stop work for that day?
Yeah, we can stop work for that.
But knowing, like, we're watching weather reports, you know, we've had a few significantly windy days in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Where just for health and public safety, it makes sense to not work on that
Yeah,
particular.
we can.
And the monitors also, they monitor wind speed as well. So that's something we would keep an eye on in real
They
time
monitor
throughout the
wind
day.
speed, direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
All of that. So we will know that on a
So
daily
that's
basis.
another precaution that we can take, to not have this operation active on excessively windy days during the project.
Yeah, and then, sorry, just one last question. So you guys said you're gonna remove 6 feet of the soil in that area? Like, to the depth of 6 feet?
It's going to vary. It's based on the depth that the fill was imported to. It's anywhere between 2 and 4 feet of removal, then another 6 inches into native.
So when you guys remove it, are you guys gonna put any soil back, or it's just gonna be gone?
Yeah. I don't remember where we laid it. Are we, because I know there's obviously construction planned at the site. I think where we
So
left it was.
that
we
is,
were gonna
that
back-
is an open question. And that is something that, we've had a preliminary conversation. Well, first of all, let me say that any soil that would need to be imported on this for purposes of leveling the ground at the Schedler property post excavation or for park development, if and when we get to that point, that will need to be certified clean fill that is brought onto the site, which is standard practice in the industry. And that is what we will follow. And we will work with Matrix and Suburban, who's the consulting engineer on the park development project, to ensure that all of those soils are certified before they come on site.
I have a couple of questions.
Could you just state your name, please?
Linda Tarzian, Ridgewood resident. So I apologize, I walked in late. If you already covered this, please bear with me and the rest of the good folks who are here. How long has Matrix and I guess Suburban been consulting in this particular, how long has they been doing consulting in soil remediation?
In total in their
Yeah,
professional
if they can
careers?
answer, that's fine. Just
Okay.
how many years has Matrix as a company, operating company, been doing soil remediation?
Matrix has been a remediation and environmental consulting engineering firm since the 90s.
Okay, good. What can you tell us, or what can you share? What is your opinion on what happened at Orchard Field, which is a Ridgewood school district?
They have no
Okay,
knowledge.
I'm not educated on the
Okay, so
Orchard
you've
Field.
been in
I'll
business,
answer
I'd like to finish. You've been in business since the 90s, and you can't comment on the contaminated soil that's been at Orchard, and it's
Linda,
over $1 million
Orchard-
has
Orchard
been spent.
Field- Orchard Field is owned by the Board of Education. The Board of Education did not contract with Matrix relative to
understand.
Orchard Field. So with respect to both Melissa and Chris, they would have no knowledge of the situation there or that project.
Okay, but if you're an expert in the field, why would you not even know about it?
Because it has
I'm
nothing
asking
to do
them.
with
I'd
this.
like them
No,
to answer.
I'm gonna answer because I'm the one who retained Matrix and they have been working on behalf of the village. But I don't even think that they knew walking in here tonight that there was an Orchard School, because it's a completely separate project on the opposite side of town and they have no exposure to that project during their
I
employment here
understand.
with the village.
But if you're in the field, I would think you would want to know about it, especially in a town that's contemplating or has hired you. That's number one.
The two areas of contamination, for the record, have nothing to do with one another.
But it goes to knowing the industry. So since you did not handle and are not familiar with happened at Orchard and is overseen by the Board of Ed, did you realize that that site was supposedly cleaned of the contaminated soil? And 10 years later, 20 years later, because my children played there and it's under contaminated situation, it's still not clean. So how are these good people who pay taxes, 400 families who live in this area, how are they going to be guaranteed that this is the right thing to do for them, their livelihoods, the property values of their homes. How do we know? What guarantee are they going to have?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk to property values or any of those other things. I can just tell you what Matrix is doing is remediating the impacted fill that was brought in. And we're going to remove that and clean that up to the established DEP soil remediation standards. You know, any of the other ancillary stuff that may happen as a result of that is kind of outside of the purview of what we're doing out there.
Okay. Second question. So the 80 or odd trees, and again, if I have the numbers wrong, I apologize, that are going to be removed, destroyed, they absorb rainwater runoff. Without those trees, there's going to be flooding on turf. How is this going to be addressed? I know outside your purview, but these good people are here because they have concerns about the value of their homes plummeting. So again, I'm just asking from your perspective, normally you would be welcomed in open arms in communities that have contaminated soil, but they're here because they have other concerns. So what's to prevent this area from flooding without those 80 or odd trees absorbing, drinking the rainwater?
I mean, the trees have to be removed in order for us to remove the contaminated fill. There's really no way around that. If you want to come back after the remediation is complete and talk about like how, you know, development plans for the site, that's a different conversation. But I think that's a question for suburban probably and the village.
These trees, 35?
35 in the remediation area.
The 35 within the remediation area are going to be removed no matter what the future of this property holds. They have to be removed as part of this approved as part of the remediation plan that we're awaiting approval from the DEP on.
Okay,
Who's next?
thank you. Doreen Regina from 540 Bennington. I have a basic question. You did touch upon possibly using a 911 reverse call to residents. I would like assurance that, especially for many of us that have allergies to dust, lung issues, we want to know when that monitor goes off, telling you that the dust is too high. You mentioned that it'll be a cell phone call that you'll ring and tell them to stop.
Yeah, yes, we will be on site receiving the actual alert, and then we can walk over to the contractor to say stop.
Yeah, okay.
This is all going to happen on site. Doreen?
Right, but now I would like though some assurance that the rest of us who live in the neighborhood know when that dust goes off. So for instance, people with lung issues and with allergies to dust and other medical issues would then put an N95 mask on to go outside and pick up their garbage box. You know, they'll do things to help themselves.
So if a situation rises to the level where action needs to be taken to alert the neighborhood, and I don't know if you were in the room when we talked about this earlier, but we are going to do everything we can within our means, because we only have contact information for the people who have supplied it to us or through a community group, like your email distribution list. But we are going to ensure that you know that. We are also going to send out a letter to all of the residents in that neighborhood with a QR code before the project begins, where they can sign up for emergency notifications so that we try to penetrate more into the neighborhood with regard to awareness if we need to alert folks to an actionable item.
Will we get notified every time that dust level goes to a high level?
That can be arranged if that's what
Well,
everyone
I think I'm not familiar with these devices, but I would assume that there's levels.
Yeah.
And if it rose to an action item, whereas the LSRP, the licensed site remediation professional, felt that it rose to the level of needing to alert the neighborhood, that would be the trigger.
Yes.
Yeah, and my concern is your determination of what that level is and my
Not mine.
determination of what that level is might be different. If I have an allergy to dust and I have lung issues, I absolutely, or I have cancer, or I have other issues, I absolutely want to know. Anytime you need to spray water on the property, I want to know, because then if you feel it's necessary to take action in any way, even the smallest amount, I want to take action to protect myself. And I feel like we're all entitled to that. We're entitled to know so that we can take whatever additional action we want to take to protect ourselves.
I mean, what we can also do if there, and again, this is a tight-knit community over in that neighborhood. If there are folks who have specific health concerns, I would encourage you to email me and we can set up a standard that is less than the actionable item to alert the whole neighborhood. Because listen, at the same time, we have to weigh out creating public panic too, right? But if you have a specific medical condition that would warrant you to be alerted to a lesser active action level. Thank you. You can certainly email me. I will put you in touch with Melissa and Chris as we get closer to this, and we can have a specific list tailored for that.
So, right. We'll be putting together a perimeter air monitoring plan that will be made available for you guys to look at, and you'll see those levels in there. With regard to the water, sometimes that's going to be preventative. Spraying will happen probably every day. It's not necessarily indicative that there's an issue. It's that we're doing it to kind of do the suppression ahead of time so we don't have an issue. So I don't know that, us spraying water is a good metric. And I don't know that you want to get notified every time we do that, because it's not always reactive. A lot of times that's just us being proactive to prevent the dust from being generated. But the plan that we put together will include those action levels and how they were derived. And you can take a look at them. And if you have concerns, absolutely reach out.
Next. Can we just have anyone who hasn't asked questions first, and then we'll go to online, and then if people have additional questions we've already asked, then we'll follow up then. Mr. Loving?
Boyd A. Loving, Ridgewood resident. As was pointed out by Ms. Millian, this project has not yet received official NJDEP approval. However, a January date has been established for the start of remediation work. I'm just wondering how that is possible when Mr. Farrell has not yet approved this.
So we've been working, Boyd, we've been working on the timeframe for a number of months now. Since this remediation plan has been sent to Tom Farrell, and we're expecting to hear back from him by the end of the month. Simultaneously to that, Matrix, which was said at the beginning of the meeting, has been preparing the bid specs for this project because we do want to move over the winter months, because we think that it will be less intrusive on the neighborhood if we do it during that time period. So they're preparing the bid spec. Tom Farrell's reviewing the plan. We're seeking his approval. The anticipated timeframe is in December to be able to advertise and receive bids, award, and try to break ground in January. So that's not in stone, but just to set expectations with the residents who took the time to come here tonight and those online, that's the tentative timeframe.
But Mr. Farrell does not have a drop dead date where he needs to respond to this, does he?
I believe there's a time frame for him to respond, but I don't think
we haven't made a specific date that he needs to respond by.
But we're also going by his response time in the past, because as I mentioned earlier, every round of testing, that scope of work was approved by Mr. Farrell. So Melissa and Chris are gauging his response rate on past practice.
Okay, my final question is, I don't believe that there is any member of the village council present in the room. Of course, some of them may be dialed in, or they may all be dialed in. However, I'm wondering, is a recording of this going to be made available to all members of the village council so they can see what happened here tonight and what questions were raised tonight?
If they request it, we'll provide it.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Hone Ridgewood. So I had to get up from where I was and come here because those of us watching at a remote location could not see that screen at all. So that's an issue for some of the people. I had to rush down here, and the presentation, we're just
Just
seeing.
Jackie,
this-
if I may, Dylan, they can see what I can see there at home?
Are you saying that I'm not being
No,
truthful?
no, no. I just didn't know
I was
what.
sitting at home and I could see that exact screen that
I'm-
you're seeing
I'm
right
not-
there.
I'm not getting in an
So
argument with
we
you.
can't-
I just
we-
asked,
if-
I just
may
asked.
finish? May I finish?
No, I just
So-
asked my IT director.
Sitting at home watching this screen, what I'm seeing are the people sitting here and that screen behind them, and I can't zoom in to actually look at the presentation.
And
of
all
what
I was
you're
doing,
seeing.
all I was doing was
So I'm
asking
fine.
to confirm
The
what you
presentation,
could see from.
seeing this information now, and obviously a lot of us are gonna need time to digest this and really understand the questions and the chart that you're presenting. So I'm wondering, and like Ms. Millian had pointed out also, that this information might change. So will there be a follow-up where public members can continue to submit their questions and concerns and then have that answered?
Yeah, I mean, the email questions that's always open. That's not, there wasn't a specific period where those had to be in by. As questions come up after tonight, moving forward while the project is going on, if you want to continue to submit questions, they'll be answered the way we've been providing answers previously.
Okay, thank you. And on my way over here, there was some mention of children and families that were living across the street, something about the bus routes for kids not to be, it might change, so not to be out there when this is happening. And what about the children that live there? What's the impact to them? So the children, the wildlife, and the pets, should people be kept inside during that time frame?
No, I mean, we're going to be monitoring for any kind of dust generation. We're going to be doing everything we can to suppress. You know, if that's something you want to do as an extra layer of precaution, then by all means. You're asking if the people that are in their houses while the work is going on should stay in their houses, right?
Yeah, so if the bus route needs to change so that the kids aren't out there, not just for traffic and the trucks. the
I
actual
think it was
people
more
that-
guided towards the traffic
Yeah.
control.
So I think that was more about avoiding the trucks, not the.
So the families would be safe to just go on about being in their front yards, lawns.
Yeah, unless advised otherwise, but we don't anticipate there being any situation where you wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, the comment on the bus route, and I will defer to the police department to make that decision with Dr. Schwartz if it becomes necessary, would be to modify any pickup areas so that the children are less exposed to West Saddle River Road as trucks come in and out of the site.
So the trucks, but not the substance or the pollutants.
That's an LSRP question, which I think Chris answered. The discussion earlier was about.
So I ask my
access.
question again. Is the concern with the trucks the contents of what's inside the trucks that's being moved, or just the trucks themselves?
The concern with the bus route.
In the, coming in and out of the neighborhood?
Yeah, I think there were some concerns about coming in and out of the neighborhood. The conversation about the bus routes, I think, was more about just avoiding the traffic. The concerns about the trucks transporting material in the neighborhood, I think I don't know if you saw it from when you were dialed in, but the trucks are coming in off the highway here, they're pulling into the site and they're going back out that way. So this is the area that would be impacted by the trucks coming in and out. I guess there was a bus stop, I think, here.
So the material that the trucks are carrying is the concern?
With regard to the buses, or?
I'm just in general, so.
I mean, so the concern associated with that was, once the trucks leave the site, is there going to be, someone had asked a question about the material, I guess, coming out of the trucks, and there's going to be covers on the trucks, the roll-off canvas covers that they have. And we're using licensed transporters that are trained to kind of minimize the potential for that to happen.
So they're gonna go right back on 17?
Yeah.
And then do we know where they're headed?
So the contractor that does the work is they're going to retain the transporters, and they're going to choose the facility that they're bringing it to. So we don't know the answer to that just yet.
We'll know that after we award the bid.
So when they get back on Route 17, just knowing the neighborhood the way I do, you have to accelerate pretty fast to get on that entrance to Route 17, which would also affect, I would assume, the dust coming off of the trucks, because now you have more, you're going from, 15 miles an hour to quickly going up to 55 miles per hour. There's also a major bus route there with interstate buses that stop within feet of the Schedler property. And then the next exit is also a Ridgewood residential property. So the truck routes would be very important to find out, like if they're just getting off of leaving West Saddle River Road and then exiting onto the next street, which is Racetrack Road, that's literally still coming right back into our properties.
Understood. Yeah. So once we know where the facility is that they're bringing, they'll figure out those routes, and we can provide that information.
Okay. And would that require, like DOT and other municipalities to get involved?
I don't think so. I mean, I know there's certain restrictions on weight and certain roads that they can and can't take, but once they're loaded up with soil, they're gonna have to, there's certain rules on how heavy a vehicle could be to go on certain roads. So these guys know kind of the roads are allowed to go on and the roads that they're not from that perspective. But beyond that, I don't think they need to involve the DOT, to get approval for the route, if that's what you're asking.
Other than excavation, can this be remediated in any other way? Someone had reached out to us and had mentioned that there was like some type of microorganisms that can be put into the soil that would clean and filter it on its own. It might take a little longer, but there would be no excavation. It would sustain the trees and things of that matter. Are there other options of a remediation other than excavation?
Yeah, I mean, the removal is just one option. Sure, there are other options.
Okay, and were they explored?
I think that there was a desire to get the contamination removed from the property. It sounded like there was significant public concern about it being there. And I think that was, the village looked to get, correct me if I'm wrong, but they wanted to have a timely solution to get the material out of there as soon as possible.
So there could be another way to remediate that was discussed. Is there a way for the public to see the comparisons of the different options that we could have had?
There weren't comparisons per se. No, there was conversations about remedial options, kind of big picture. And I think that, as you said, like what you just described, there's a lengthy time component to that. And the village had requested kind of a quick resolution to removing the contamination.
So could you answer why the quick as opposed to the safest and untouched way?
Because of the significant public concern.
So
Mhm.
I think the public is more concerned about this being excavated and blowing everywhere and exposing us and having alarms and alerts versus just filling the soil with microorganisms that can clean it up on its own, which would probably save us millions.
I'm not aware of the
And talk about
microorganism
being
option.
pioneers.
Yeah, so I mean, another aspect to consider is that a lot of excavation needs to happen at the site to start out with, because the things you're describing would not address the visually observed solid waste, and Bureau of Solid Waste is requiring physical removal of that material. So on a site where we just had, where maybe solid waste was not an issue, that's more compatible with that kind of remedial option. At a site where we have to mobilize equipment and trucks out there and have to physically remove material, where that's not going to be remediated by that type of approach, that doesn't really make as much sense. And in terms of a cost, I don't know that there's actual cost reduction when we already have to be out there doing a physical removal of material.
The two options that were presented to the village were excavation or some sort of capping. And again, based on the public's concern about this, we at the village were not comfortable keeping that material there, even in a cap state.
Well, I understand that NJDEP said capping was not an option, but
So we would not be able to cap the solid waste.
and said that their interest would be to do this in a more natural state. I could definitely see now how you would want to listen to the public, right? Because we're very concerned about moving this soil.
I mean,
Cleaning it up was our main focus. How it's cleaned up, I think, if we can do it in a natural microorganism way, would be the best for everybody. We would not lose trees. We wouldn't lose.
the plan that's been submitted, the plan that's been submitted to the DEP is for excavation, and that's what we're waiting for on approval from Mr. Farrell.
So could we not submit another plan with this new information?
The plan's already been submitted.
So you won't listen to the public?
No, we've listened to the public. The public concern is what caused us to move towards excavating and getting the contaminated soil off the site.
I don't think anyone said off the site. I thought all of us said that we wanted the contamination remediated, and there is an option to have it remediated without having to remove the soil and destroy the trees.
At this point, the plan that's been submitted is for excavation, and that's how we're going to move forward.
You had mentioned the soil, you would have to come in and remove the visual soil. Can you tell us a little bit about how much that is versus the other soil?
Yeah. I can't give you weights or volumes because I can't measure, take a scale and put everything on a scale. However, I made an estimate. So the purple, this figure right here.
Could you go back to that on the overhead?
That represents the areas where we identified visually observed solid waste. Again, that's concrete, that's asphalt, that's bricks, that's wood, debris. That covered approximately, all of that together covers approximately 24,000 square feet. So that's the spread of it. Again, I can't provide a volume or a weight of material that's going to be hauled off site because we won't know that until a truck gives us a weight ticket. And I can't tell you exactly what was in every single purple location, but it was generally the components that I just spoke about.
And the other?
Sorry?
And the other?
Are you talking about this? This
Yeah,
one?
so-
Oh, like what volumes for that?
Right.
Oh, yes. So that, standing on this. Oh, okay. So the berm area is about 10,000 cubic yards or 14,000 tons of material that we're anticipating to be shipped out. And I'll start with the larger removal area, which is that, sorry, if you could flip back again. So that greenish beige shaded area, the large one, that's about 7,400 cubic yards in total, which is about 10,360 tons. And then those 4 smaller excavation removal areas, those each are generally the same exact size. Those are all about 8 cubic yards or 11.2 tons of material. And this is all anticipated.
Jackie, I would just ask you to.
You have a
Jackie-
total ton?
Jackie, if I may, I just ask you to wrap up your questions because there's other people in the room and there's also people online. And Chris is on call for another hearing at 8:30. So I just want to clarify that. I don't want anyone
So
to
we'll
feel
be back again
disenfranchised.
if they have to leave?
I mean, I haven't thought about that. I'm just saying that he's on call for another meeting and I want to give everyone the opportunity to be heard. And if there's time, I'd be glad to come back to you.
I can add that up right now if you want. I didn't total it.
Yeah, please. And while you do that, then I'll just ask my final question about water at the Schedler property. So it wasn't a question of whether there was wetlands. I believe they said that there were, but in addition to that, there was a water well at Schedler that was capped. That was part of phase 1 initially, and there has been water there. We've been seeing it I've been in the neighborhood for over 25 years. So the water well was directly almost right behind where I'm seeing all this green area. So are you saying that was not affected by this contamination? And then what happens to that water? I'm sorry, I just really don't know about these things.
The well that was capped?
Mhm.
So there, at some point, there is a water table there. We just
There was,
have,
okay.
yeah, we just have not, down to 10 feet have not encountered it.
I see.
And so when we do our evaluation of whether or not a groundwater, the need for a groundwater investigation is triggered, we look at things like proximity to contamination in soil and whether we have it over a certain concentration. Looking at the data that we have, we just didn't trigger because we didn't encounter water. We kind of know the vertical depth of where we have this fill material. It didn't trigger a groundwater investigation. But if we kept drilling down, maybe, I don't know if it's 25 feet down, 50 feet down, typically wells, potable wells, they're not pulling from shallow water. They're typically pulling from something a little deeper. So at some point, I'm sure we would encounter water if we bored down, 50 feet. It's just not at a depth where we would expect that we would have impact from this material.
So did you want the whole berm plus yeah, so that's about 24,405 tons.
24,000, say that again?
405,
Tons
correct.
versus 24,000 square feet of visible material?
Those are two mutually
Separate.
exclusive things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes. They're two, yeah.
So we could, in essence, have 24,000 square feet trucked out and 24,405 tons remediated with microorganisms.
Potentially, yes. Again,
Thank you.
And again, I'd like to go to the people who haven't asked questions first, so everyone can be heard.
Hi, Hyunju Kwak. I really appreciate this, by the way. I really appreciate the time that you've taken, and I hope the community has an opportunity to ask postmortem after this is done. I don't know if it's a
And
consideration.
just so you're aware, there is a portal that we've put together where, well, there's an email distribution where you can submit questions
Mhm.
and Matrix will evaluate them, or the village will evaluate them, depending on what the question is that's being asked. And we will provide answers to that. I think we've done 4 rounds of that so far. 3 or 4
yeah.
rounds. Yeah. So that is open to the public after
Great.
this meeting as well.
Great. So this may have been asked before, but there's a lot of dialogue about how this has been guided by DEP standards. And one of the DEP, I guess, requirements was that it was determined that post-remediation monitoring is not required, which is surprising, but it's all DEP guidelines. What I wanted to know is, I believe that DEP has different standards. If you are, for example, remediating by a school, they have much tighter restrictions that actually require and necessitate post-remediation monitoring. So what is the standard that has been applied for this that will then trigger all the protocols that you are mentioning? And is that standard, does that take into account that this is contemplated for youth activities, including a children's playground, and you have very close residential neighborhoods?
So the 3 standards, it's really 5, but the 3 standards that guide the remediation are the non-residential, I'm going to call them direct contact standards. It's inhalation, it's ingestion, it's dermal contact. But so there's a non-remediation that collectively, I'm going to refer to that as direct contact, non-residential direct contact standards, residential direct contact standards, and then there's a migration to groundwater standard. The 2 direct contact standards, they take into account, I guess, property use and exposure routes or potential health risks. The third, which is the migration to groundwater standards, what that measures is it's a level at which the DEP expects if you exceed that number, potentially you will have impact in groundwater within a certain distance of the contamination. So the residential standards typically are the more stringent out of the 2 direct contact standards. The scenario for, I guess, planned for this site that you mentioned is a recreational use. The exposure route that would be used for that calculation, it assumes less of an exposure than the residential numbers. So by cleaning up to the residential numbers, by default will be below any recreational standard that there would be. Now, the DEP doesn't have default recreation standards. What they do is you can apply for an alternate remediation standard based on property use, and that is one of the scenarios, recreation. But the exposure scenario that's included in that calculation is one that's much less than you would encounter at a residential property. Residential numbers, they assume things that, it's a lifetime of exposure, daily exposure, anywhere from 8 to 16 hours daily, you're exposed to this material. Recreational use includes much less of a frequency so those numbers typically are going to be much higher. And I did, just as a kind of an exercise in the beginning, in the onset, when we got involved in the project, just to make sure that because I know that there were people that were using this, not necessarily for soccer field, but just outdoor recreation. They were walking dogs. They were just nature walks on the property. I did run a calculation just to see if we were exceeding what the DEP would calculate as a recreational standard for the compounds that we have, and we did not.
Andrew, 1 second. Are you good on time? I don't want to.
Yeah, so for a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The most stringent. Yeah, I wouldn't say high, so it's really the lowest standards. The numbers that we're trying to achieve are the lowest numbers. Yeah.
But in terms of the fill, it would be the highest number that would be removed or extracted because we're applying the highest.
We're removing anything that is over one of those direct contact numbers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Who hasn't gotten to speak yet that would like to speak?
Joe DeMarco, 572 West Saddle River Road. My question is regarding the trucks. Has it been thought of whether the trucks, if part of the berm is removed, could directly go to Route 17 and really spare the rest of West Saddle River Road from the truck traffic and the potential of being closer to the buses and whatnot?
So I had the same thought sitting here, it seems like a lot of the questions were about concern about the trucks on the route they were taking. And I had the same exact thought as you. And I don't know, we haven't had an opportunity to talk to the village about that, but that's something we'll look at.
You also have to talk to state. with
Right.
Access. on
Okay,
the
yeah.
state, because the current access is a direct acceleration lane onto the highway.
Okay.
So the state would have to approve any other access to the highway.
Okay.
I mean, that would seem like it could be the best option for, the community around there. So I think that's something worth exploring if possible.
Yeah, we'll definitely look into it.
The monitors that are being put up, are they close to that remediation site? What distance are those monitors from where the remediation is going on?
Typically, they're going to be on the perimeter of the site where you would experience, we want to measure. We don't want to measure if we're generating dust in the center of the property, and that's not going to reach anybody. That's not what we're concerned with. We're concerned with any kind of dust that might be migrating off the site. So we're measuring, it's kind of like the barrier that we're seeing right at the property boundary to make sure that we don't have anything going above any trigger levels at that point.
So then my question is if we're stirring up enough dust close to the site, how are we confirming that none of that dust is going to any of these non-contaminated parts of the property that's there? We're ensuring that it's not going to the community, but we're not ensuring that now another part of the area of Schedler is potentially contaminated. And if we're not testing then after we're doing all this remediation, how do we know that there's no, contamination being sent there?
Right. And that's why our plan includes proactive suppression of dust and kind of calling it if we see any kind of dust being generated, make that evaluation, take into account things like the wind and what we're seeing migrating off the site. And it's all in accordance with DEP guidance on managing that kind of thing.
Goal is no dust at all.
Yeah. And I know I don't want to minimize the concern. It's a legitimate concern, but I also, I don't want anyone having the idea that there's going to be dust devils going across the site. Ideally, we're not going to generate any dust. It's going to be kind of the material. We're spraying it with a mist as we're digging to keep that stuff kind of contained. And we're loading not wet soil, but soil that's kind of stuck together as it goes into the truck. So, I don't want anyone to have the idea that there's just going to be a dust storm while we're digging.
Is there any, I'm sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
And so the water that's putting on there is more of a mist. There's no possibility of enough water going and penetrating down to then put that contamination further down.
No, I mean, it's not, it's a mist and it's not going to generate a significant amount. And that soil that's being sprayed is then going directly into a truck.
And one more thing, back to the trucks. I think we really do need to know, once we pick a contractor, what the route's gonna be. You know, I'm off of Racetrack Road, so are we going, you know, off onto 17, but then back through all the Ridgewood neighborhoods? I think.
Yeah, I think that was made clear by the captain, that the only area we plan for the trucks to, well, it's not up there right now, but the only area that we plan for the trucks to route is off Route 17 North into the Schedler property at the driveway apron next to the house, out in the same direction and back on Route 17 North.
Correct, but I think then, you know, if you have to go back down to Route 17 South, you know, sometimes you have to loop back to East Saddle River to get to
That'll
17
be,
South. So
you're talking about getting off at an exit further
Correct,
north.
yeah.
That'll be a conversation that the police department needs to have with the contractor at a pre-construction meeting. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else in the room who hasn't been heard? Okay, I'd like to go to hybrid, Dylan, just to make sure that everyone's given the opportunity. And then if Chris is not being rushed out of here, we'll continue with some additional questions in the room.
Rourke, you're on.
Yeah, Rorik Halaby, village resident. Speaking as a former engineer, I can tell you that no project is painless. Every project has disruptions. You don't flip the switch and all at once it's done. Now, we need to get this work done to be able to then turn Schedler into a park. Now, this idea of using microorganisms is just really shakes my head, because you're talking about years and years and years and years. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, the level of contamination, sometimes people are so scared of the contamination, as if it's like Chernobyl or some radioactive material, that dust is going to carry it and all at once my lawn is going to get radioactive. Could you put things in perspective as far as the level of contamination? I mean, for one thing, the DEP clearly stated it doesn't mean, with what we have right now, that you cannot get onto the property, if you will. So I'd love to hear your comment on that. Lastly, as
Eric,
far as
I would just ask you to hold your comments there and let Melissa and Chris respond. And then if you have a follow-up question, we'll allow that.
yeah, please, thank you.
So we have contamination above a standard, and that's kind of what's driving the remediation. And I don't want to, I don't think it's my place to suggest how concerned people should be about it. It's, I've definitely seen higher concentrations on other sites, but we're above a standard, and we're going to remove what's there till we meet the DEP standards.
Okay. One last thing, as far as water wells, I know Rich Calby at Ridgewood Water volunteered to test the water of all the people with water wells. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Keith, he also offered to connect those people with Ridgewood Water so that they can get piped water instead of water wells. And so my point is, people on water wells close to 17, their water is contaminated anyway. So this is such a spurious argument.
And if you have a question, I would ask you
Yeah.
to ask the question.
Okay, okay.
And I'll respond
That's
to
fine.
the water piece when you're.
Okay,
when-
this is fine. Thank you.
Okay. Just to clarify, Rourke, with regard to the water, I don't think there was ever an offer to test the wells. What we asked for was any resident who was concerned and wanted Ridgewood Water's professionals to analyze their testing results that they can do, through a private firm. We would be glad to do that. And we did have conversation with regard to offering to hook up and find a way to hook up any individuals who are on residential wells to the Ridgewood Water Public System. So we did have those conversations, and that offer still stands. Next one.
Ankit Daria?
Hey, do you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Ankit.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Just two questions. Any project related to OSHA requires a health and safety plan. Is that going to be created by Matrix and shared with the residents so we can take a look at what the safety plan is if the dust comes our way?
Yeah, we will have, it's called a HASP, a health and safety plan. We have an in-house health and safety officer that will be drafting that. The contractor, remediation contractor will also have a HASP. The air monitoring information will also be in in our perimeter air monitoring plan. That will also be available.
Okay, and the
The
second
only thing,
question.
if I could just add, the health and safety plan is really targeted towards the workers at the site. It will be available for review, but I don't know that it's going to have any information in there that you sounded like you were looking for based on your question.
No, sorry, so the reason I asked for that is if the level goes too high, there should be a safety plan, there should be a plan that the workers get out. And that's a warning sign for us. I live right across where the trucks are going to enter. And I need to know because I work from home. I travel in and out. I have a small child and there's a bus stop right in front of us. So if that's going to impact the kids or my health or any of my family's health, I need to know. If the workers are running, then I need to be out of here too.
Yeah,
Right.
and I would just to give you some perspective on that, based on the concentrations we have, I don't foresee a scenario where the workers at the site would have to evacuate the site.
Okay, and then the second question is, I know you said that the monitors are going to be at the perimeter. Is it possible to have it 10 feet out, then another 20 feet, and then at the perimeter? So at least you know that the levels are, if it triggers the first one, the second one, that means it's coming towards the edge.
So
Why only the
having
perimeter?
levels of multiple
Yes.
levels of monitors.
Right. So if it hits the first one, okay, so it's a yellow, right? If it hits the second one, okay, it's going out a little further out. Stop then instead of it coming to the perimeter, and then we are looking at it. And then we are reacting instead of proactively looking at the other two.
Melissa, what is standard practice?
Standard practice is having them only on the perimeter. If that's a conversation you want to have and have more, it's
Yeah, I mean that we'll consider that. We could take a look at it. I just, the size of the parcel, what you're describing is something that would make sense on a larger site. We're talking about dust potentially being carried by the wind, and I think that this site is not large enough to space those enough where you're going to get any kind. I would expect that if one's going off, it's within a couple seconds, the next one's going off. I don't know that it's going to give you the level of warning you're looking for, but we can definitely we will look into that and incorporate. There's no limit on how many monitors we can put out there.
I mean, is it possible to put at the other side where the residents are, just at their edge, so we get notified that, hey, something happened? Now it's on our end. Would that be
they
a
will be
possibility?
right along where the residences on the northern area are, since that's the perimeter anyway. So they'll be right there.
So no, I think you're looking at the northern side. I live across where you come off Route 17 and you're making a left into the lot. I'm across the parcel.
Yes, they'll
Where-
also be on that perimeter as well.
Okay, and then this is just for Keith. If you're spending all millions of dollars on doing all this testing, remediating all this stuff, why not just do one extra test? This is for the town, the village, Keith, you. Just spend a little bit more money to do the testing after all the work's done. That's just a comment for.
So that is a conversation that we will have with Tom Farrell down at the DEP. And based on his guidance, we will consider that.
Thank you.
I think Susan is up next.
Susan? Please unmute.
Hi, Susan Ruan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, yeah, I have two or three questions. One is I might have missed it. In how long anticipated is this projected for? Because I might have missed that at one
Susan,
point.
it'll be up to 6 weeks, is the anticipated timeframe.
Okay. Um, and how and approximately how many trucks are anticipated to remove um all the debris? Approximately.
I have to do a quick calculation on that. You want me to get back to you?
Yeah, and keep in mind, that would be over a 6-day period, a 6-week period, give or take.
Yeah.
But if you had to guess, Melissa, just for
I mean, I
public
can do it. I
awareness.
can do it really, really fast.
Okay. You
Give me
do,
a second.
she's going to do the math, Susan, if you want to ask your next question.
All right, and this is in regard to Terhune. Just because I mean, my kid, I know the bus routes. Unfortunately, none of the buses for any of the schools turn down Terhune, and I believe it's because it's a small, narrow street. And that is literally across the street from the park. That's the bus stop that you guys are talking about. I think it's just the configuration of the street, especially for the bigger buses to make a U-turn at the end is very hard for them. I know that's something that the superintendent has to get involved in, but that is just an FYI. I've never ever seen any of the buses turn down that street because of the configuration to the street.
Yeah,
Even for elementary schools, they come to the edge of that street.
Susan,
I
with
know.
regard to the bus routes, I'm going to leave that in the capable hands of Chief Lyons and Captain Ender and the folks at the police department, who, once we have a contract with the vendor who's going to provide the service to us, we will sit down with them and we will adjust bus stops, anything concerning the arrival and dismissal of school accordingly.
Okay, no, it's just, I was just gonna say, that's just an FYI that I've just noticed because, my kids, when they took the buses and, and just driving. And that was just, that's the bus stop that always seems to have the issues is the Terhune bus stop. And
Have
then,
that calculation. I'm sorry, Susan, I think Melissa
Go
has
ahead.
your calculation to your second question.
Yeah, so I'm only able to calculate for the chemically driven waste or chemically driven soil, which is again on the one on this figure with the shading, the green and orange shading. It's about 1,100 trucks, 1,110 trucks.
Over the 6 weeks.
Over 6 weeks, and Chris just did a calculation that's about 37 trucks a day. Like I said, we've hoped we could do more in a day. Wanted.
Susan, did
how
you have
many-
another question?
Yeah, well, just to follow for that, like approximately how many an hour? And would it impede other people's like people trying to get in and out of their houses for?
It really depends on the destination that these trucks are going to. If they're doing multiple turnarounds in a day, if we're ordering 36 trucks in total and they come in and they do that one turn, if they're all there at one time, if they are doing multiple turns and we're going to somewhere that's about an hour-ish away, towards the middle to end of the day, they start to get scattered. Typically the most volume at one point is in the morning when they're waiting to get loaded.
And this is just another follow-up question in regards to the trucks. And I know this is just a hypothetical scenario, but it's a hypothetical scenario that happens a lot around here. What happens if there's an accident on Route 17 north and everyone starts driving down West Saddle River Road? How does that affect the
I think that would affect the activity at the Schedler property. And I think the police department would need to make a determination if there was an accident that closed the highway for a period of time to stop the work until that accident was cleared and the trucks had clear passage off the site.
Okay, because, yeah, that happens. I mean, unfortunately, it happens more often than not. And we've seen it a lot happen, and everyone from Route 17 starts driving down West Saddle River Road. Okay,
Okay, thank
all
you,
right.
Susan.
Thank
Dylan,
you.
I think Linda had a question in the back. I don't see any other hands up on the Zoom.
On the Zoom? Oh,
No,
no.
there are no other hands, so we'll go to Linda.
I also want to say thank you. I apologize. I didn't thank all of you for being here and having this open forum. It's not easy to be away from your home and your families, but I appreciate it for giving us this option to vent our concerns and hear our concerns. Having said that, are you aware that this was originally designated a historic preservation site by the town and then SHPA?
Yes, we were aware that this is a historic
Does it
site.
concern you that it is or may be overturned? And does it not concern you?
I don't know that that has an impact on the remediation efforts. I think that might tie into some other things, but not what we're out there to do.
So I know Jackie had asked a question about other options. I would like, as a taxpayer, to see a proposal of other options. So if there was nothing to be done currently, would you still be advocating this level of excavation if there was going to be no development of this wooded parcel? Would you still be advocating doing it? Would you have been hired to do something? That's question one. And if it was going to be a less invasive proposal, would you still be advocating the extent? And I don't know if you covered the cost. And again, I apologize if you covered the cost estimate of the tonnage that has to be removed, not counting the hard bricks and concrete and mortar, all that stuff. So that's number two. And why, again, not your company, why was contaminated fill brought in? Again, not your company. Then fourth, so you're going to be digging down and removing 6 to 8 inches? Is that what I understand? And then-
No, generally the removal will be between 2 and 4 inches. And I think where you're hearing 6 is we're going to also be excavating 6 inches into the native material to ensure that we are.
Okay, so what's the total?
It's between 2 and 4.5.
So say 6 inches tops, maybe? No, 4 inches.
Okay.
4 feet.
4 feet, okay.
Sorry, yeah.
So I thought someone asked a question and I'm not sure it got answered by the village manager. Will there be soil being brought in to level it up to the street level? And again, I apologize if you answered it, and I'm really slow as a senior citizen.
So we're still in talks with Suburban on the development of, or our involvement into the grading of the site. The excavation removal will obviously need to be filled in.
So I don't know, okay, sorry.
And it will be filled in with certified clean fill material that we will be reviewing prior to. it
Do we
coming on
know
site.
how high that level will be to bring it up? I'm just curious of the 4 feet or whatever.
That's a discussion with Suburban.
Okay, so are you aware that the turf field at Ridgewood High School, which has turf, has flooded more than once? Can someone tell me twice? At a huge cost to remediate. My concern is if it's not brought up to level, is there a risk that this is going to then flood because it's an impermeable material?
Keep in mind that the high school field is along the banks of the Hohokus Brook.
understand.
There is not a floodable waterway at the Schedler site. But again, that's a question for Suburban because they are the ones who have been awarded the contract to do the site design for the potential park.
So if you can try and address the other questions, I mean, if nothing was to be done, would you be doing any soil remediation? Would there be a need to do it? And also, would you, if there's the more modest plan that was originally envisioned by the Schedlers when they donated property was sold to the town, would you then do a more modest remediation? And could it be done the less invasive, the more natural way that won't impact the families?
So when you say if there was nothing
If
to be done,
Schedler property was left
talking about
as
the redevelopment,
a
okay.
natural wooded landscape.
Right. So our recommendation was partially based on, the village wanted to have a resolution to this where the impacted material was removed because there was a significant public concern. But even excluding that, on a site like this, my recommendation would have been excavation. And that's because we have to mobilize equipment out there. We have to mobilize trucks out there anyway because of the solid waste material that's in the fill that we're being required to remove. So we're already out there with this equipment. We've already mobilized equipment out there. We're already disturbing a large portion of it to get that material out. That's why, in large part, why excavation was recommended here. There are other options that, the bioremediation option that was brought up. We would need to do studies to see if that's, when I say that's an option, what I mean is there are other alternate remedial options that we could explore. It doesn't mean it would be feasible at this site. We would need to do some studies in order to determine that first. And which maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. I just want to make sure it's clear when I say yes, it's an option. I mean, literally, it's just one of the many options that are out there. It doesn't mean it would necessarily be ideal at a site like this.
Apologize if there was a cost estimate to this project. What is the rough cost estimate for this excavation and soil remediation?
We won't know that until we go out to bid with the contractor, which we anticipate to happen in the month of December.
What's the budget that's been maybe allocated or being put aside to?
There was a $1.5 million bond initiative that was passed by the village council for purposes of soil testing and potential remediation. But we won't know the hard numbers until we get the bids back in December. Okay.
I have a question about the fence that is along the berm. So is that going to be removed as well? And if so, like, what is the risk of the vehicles just dragging into the property?
The fence will be removed as part of the remediation because it falls. You can see we're removing both of those shaded areas. So
the split rail fence will
the
need to
split
be
rail,
removed
yeah.
in order to remove the material on the berm.
Is that going to be replaced with anything else or the same fence again?
Immediately, likely not, until we have a definitive path forward on the park development.
And so how are you mitigating the risk of just vehicles dragging on to the Schedler property and maybe to the nearby residences as well?
I think there's a guardrail.
The guardrail.
Oh, there's no guardrail?
So we've had
there's
conversation,
nothing
we've had
there.
conversation with the Department of Transportation about the need for an appropriate guardrail when the excavation is complete.
So there will be one.
Yeah, we've had conversations.
Okay.
We have not set a schedule for that because the DOT hasn't been made aware of our time schedule, but the DOT is aware of the access point once the berm is removed.
So in the meanwhile, there is still that risk. So is there anything that you want to make the public aware of?
No, once we have a time frame, we're gonna communicate that to the Department of Transportation, who would be responsible for that infrastructure on Route 17.
And my other question was, can you tell me the cutoff wind speed limit to perform this work?
Which limit?
The wind speed limit.
Oh, I don't have that off the top of my head. That's a calculation that will be presented in the perimeter air monitoring plan. And experts who prepare those will be doing that.
Okay, thanks.
I think this is our last question, so.
Sorry if I missed this. So in
If
the
you
end,
could just state your name.
oh, Fretra De Silva,
Thank you,
West Saddle River Road. In the end, all of that land there will be flat, right? The green and the beige or brown, all of that will be flat.
For
Flat to the
development,
highway.
yes.
Okay. Has the village, well, I guess, will the village discuss with the Department of Transportation any concept of a wall or something, some kind of barrier to the highway?
Fred, the DOT
Fretra.
will not do Fretra, sorry, will not do standalone walls. They will do them as part of a larger infrastructure project, but they will not do standalone sound barriers or safety walls. So we have had some discussion with the DOT about what they would recommend on this site. I actually met with the Assistant Commissioner of the DOT on this issue. And right now, I think the recommendation is for a guardrail. They did talk about the concept of an elevated guardrail, and Suburban will be having additional conversations with the DOT to come up with the recommended option.
I don't understand standalone wall,
Uh,
sorry.
It's essentially a guardrail that's higher than the normal standard guardrail.
Mhm.
And when I met with the assistant DOT commissioner, they were talking about possibly having it elevated, but that's more of an engineering discussion than an administrative discussion.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, last question right here.
Patty Infantino, 6 Betty Court. I didn't know until tonight about the 35 trees. So now that the 35 trees, I'm really upset about that. And we have the light, the air, and everything, the pollution from the highway coming directly in, and nothing since there's nothing to save us, or once this is done, we're going to have a lot more pollution. I mean, in terms of coming in from the highway. So in terms of light, air, and everything else. And so it's a big problem. I see looking into alternatives to doing this because of the 35 trees. I'm very concerned about that. I didn't know that until the discussion tonight. So also another thing, if all these 80 other trees that were planted on the berm are in contaminated earth, and you're going to clean off all the contaminated earth so they could be planted, it doesn't seem to make sense because how much contaminated earth can you get off all those trees? Who's going to do that? Is that part of your job to clean off the trees?
The village is, they're hiring. He's gonna fix it. The village is hiring, Matrix isn't doing the tree relocation. They're hiring someone else to do that.
I would think that an arborist might do
I'm
something.
sorry.
You've set the safety procedure.
Yeah, we're going to monitor and make sure that the soil is coming off the trees, but as far as the relocation of them and
I don't mean planting of them, the fact that the soil that they were planted in.
yeah, that has to,
contaminated.
it has to all be removed.
Pick it up and all that soil has to get off those roots.
Yep.
So you're going to get the soil off the roots so that we
We're
don't
not
have
physically the ones
contamination.
doing it, no, but we're making sure that it happens.
They're overseeing the landscape contractor who is going to do it. Actually, it's not even a landscape contractor, it's a tree specialist.
Arborist, okay. It's a big deal, and I don't know if it's going to work. But anyway, there've been a lot of big deals here.
Could I ask just one quick last question? When you sampled the soil, for what contaminants did you test?
So the initial for the grid, the initial grid sampling was for an extensive suite. It included volatile organics, semi-volatile organics, BCBs, metals, pesticides, petroleum hydrocarbons. It was basically everything. Based on that data, we identified what was present in the soil where we had contamination. So then as we did additional sampling, we targeted those specific classifications of compounds.
Okay, thank you.
Jackie, last question?
Yeah.
And I've held Chris up here, so I would just, Jackie, I'd respectfully ask you to just keep it short if you can.
If you could just please clarify two things. So the one is about the trees that are going to be removed and replanted. You'll be overseeing that because that's what the Village of Ridgewood has asked of you?
Well, no, because I want to ensure that the contaminated soil is not being moved from one portion of the site to another portion of the site.
But the idea of that replanting, was that something that you advised the village, or the village is advising you?
There was no, we did not advise relocating the trees. We were just asked if it was a possibility, and we indicated, yeah, you could do it, but you cannot transport soil from the contaminated area to the non-contaminated areas.
The genesis of this is that there was a concern about discarding approximately 80 healthy trees from the berm, and in some cases, a much smaller amount of trees from right below the berm. And the question was posed to Matrix, to Chris specifically as the LSRP, was, can these trees be saved? That was the question that we asked. And he came back and said, with the proper mitigation procedures in place and with a licensed tree specialist, arborist, whatever you want to call them, that if it's done properly, that can successfully be done. Now, is there a guarantee that every one of these trees survive replanting? Absolutely not. But with 80 healthy trees, the village felt it important to try to save them and preserve them on the property.
And in that same, I guess, manner, how the property is being remediated was also what was being asked of you? Or did you come to the table and say, these are the 10 options?
No, it was a conversation where we presented a couple different potential options. It wasn't, we didn't come with 10 options and a cost breakdown of each and a length of time. It was more just a kind of a conversation about these are some options to the site. And the two that we mainly focused on were excavation and capping. Just because, again, the idea was to limit, there seemed to be a very, there was a lot of concern, it seemingly, from the public in limiting access to that material. We were getting a lot of questions about people walking their dogs and their pets, and do they need to stay off of the property? And so the options that we gave to the village were options that effectively removed the potential for impact, for contact with that material on a quicker time scale.
Okay, so was the bio ever presented?
That wasn't something
You
we.
had said something that it was discussed, but then it wasn't.
It wasn't
not
something that
presented
was
to the
discussed
village.
as an option for this site. You asked if it was an option. It is an option. It's not something we discussed for this site. Again, it was and a lot of the driver here was the fact that we have to mobilize to the site to do an extensive removal at the direction of the DEP to begin with. So, that was a big factor in kind of what we were recommending. The fact that we had to move equipment out there, the fact that we were going to be digging up a lot of the soil to access the material that the solid waste was requiring removal.
Can I just ask a question? Chris, this is the first time I've heard of this other option from the public. Can you just share, because I'm interested and I'm sure the public is as well, can you just share what would be required for us to even consider pursuing that option?
We'd have to do some feasibility testing. It would involve kind of bringing, taking some measurements from the site to see what kind of microbes would be compatible with the conditions that are at the site. And then we'd have to see if they could be effective in remediating the specific contaminants at the specific concentrations.
There's
that
no
we have.
guarantee that they would?
No, I mean, no. Well, I guess, when you ask, well, no, I mean, the excavations, the removal is removing the material that's contaminated. So that's going to be gone. I guess when you say there's no guarantee, if we go through the feasibility process and identify microbes that would affect remediation there, I mean, it's not a guarantee, but high likelihood it would happen. Just by going out and doing the testing, there's no guarantee that we'll find microbes that are compatible with the site and the contamination, though.
Is excavation the closest thing we can come to a guarantee that all the hazardous soil would be removed off property?
Physical removal is the closest thing to a guarantee, yeah.
Thank you.
So so what you're saying is once this excavation is done, 100% there will be zero contamination on this site? You can guarantee that?
No, because we talked about it. I think maybe you weren't here yet when we talked about it. The site is located along a highway corridor. It's straddled by two different roads, and just anywhere you go where you're near a road, there's potential that there's going to be deposition from those from the roadways. There's also potential that there's other releases or people dropping stuff at the site. What I'm saying is there's a higher likelihood that physical removal of the material that we've identified as contaminated will be successful versus something where we're kind of monitoring and watching to see what happens over a long period of time. They both might work. The likelihood of success is much higher with removal.
And monitoring, will there be monitoring post this as well?
There will not, because we're removing the material. There's nothing to monitor.
So
So
think
you're,
we're gonna-
if
It-
the, if.
Something
if
like
you're
that
saying-
takes a long time.
If you're saying that the highway can then, or the pollutants can then recontaminate this area, should this area be tested every so often? And wouldn't a biomechanism in the soil that's constantly cleaning throughout the years be safer than just excavating and then walking away?
No, because those would be put at depth. And, when I said that, I was responding to your question about 100% guarantee that it's going to be clean. And I can't guarantee that because there's other factors that go into a site and potentially being contaminated. What we're targeting is specific area that was identified where we have known contamination. So I can't guarantee that there's going to be zero contamination at the site if we remove the material, but what I can guarantee is that the contaminated material that we've identified will be gone after the removal.
So with that, one last question, because I've
Just a-
kept him here,
Yeah.
he's potentially neglecting another client and I have guilt. So if you could
It-
wrap
it's
us up,
a
that
very
would be
simple
great.
question. Actually, it may be just for you.
Sure.
The village hasn't considered some kind of tree barrier against the highway. I know we talked about the limited number
No,
of
there-
trees.
there-
This is
if
the
you
number
look-
of
If
trees.
you look at the concept plan that was proposed by Suburban for the park project, there are trees along that.
No, but like a barrier of trees.
Right.
Okay.
Honestly, I can't tell you how many trees that is at this point, or how dense they would be. But that's certainly a question I can ask the other consulting engineer. All right, folks, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I think this was a great dialogue. And again, if you continue to have questions, please feel free to submit them to my office and we will share them with Melissa and Chris so that we can answer them accordingly. Thanks and have a good night.